Chapter 610. Although Qi Liang, who was a fourth-year student, had spent more time, his attacks were the heaviest. All of the fourth-year students from the 3 major academies were severely injured. Although they did not die, the injuries they suffered were serious injuries to their core. Naturally, the 3 major academies had some complaints about this. However, when they thought about the reputation of their own universities, the matter was left unsettled in the end. However, the impact of this matter did not disappear for a long time. Many people could clearly see that Qi Liang's strength was absolutely shocking. Among the younger generation of the world, he was strong enough to become a young emperor, or even the emperor of slaughter, was absolutely within reach. As for the psychic Lu Feng, other than those who had seen him compete, the others did not think that he would be a match for Qi Liang. After all, Qi Liang was a monster, and he was also a warrior. He had too much of an advantage. However, those who had seen Lu Feng fight did not think so. They had deeply experienced Lu Feng's terror. This was the kind of terrifying will and overbearing majesty that was always calm and unruffled in the face of anything. He had always been courageous, and had always been able to suppress everything. In Lu Feng's body, they could only see that kind of supreme will. Under his majesty, nothing was worth mentioning. Everyone who had seen Lu Feng fight only had one feeling in their hearts, and that was that Lu Feng was a god. He was not the kind of god who gradually grew stronger from a mortal, who finally ignited the divine fire and condensed the divine personality to transform and grow. He was the kind of supreme god that would only appear in myths and legends. He was the kind of supreme god that dominated everything. This kind of worship came from the bottom of their hearts. It made them firmly believe that Lu Feng was definitely the strongest no matter what he faced. Soon, this kind of discussion almost reached a peak because the time of the grand tournament of the Great Academies was about to arrive. For this grand tournament of the Great Academies, the seeded contestants had already been listed by these people a long time ago. It was a pity that the 2 heaven-defying monsters, Lu Feng and Qi Liang, had appeared in the grand tournament of the Great Academies. Their terror was not something that could be imagined by others. Therefore, in the hearts of the ordinary people, Qi Liang had become the true number 1 seed of the summit tournament, while Lu Feng had to settle for second place. However, this was the arrangement of ordinary people. In the eyes of the true peak existences, although the positions had changed due to the powerful appearance of the 2, the change was not very big. This year's pinnacle competition is indeed filled with talent. Even the previous clan's grand competitions are incomparable. I believe that this time, in the eyes of many people, Lu Feng, you should be ranked 6th, while Qi Liang should be ranked 3rd. Vice Principal Huang looked at Lu Feng with a smile. He was very satisfied with the results this time. Although they had only won 2 championships, both of them were freshmen and sophomores. This represented a kind of hope, a kind of future. Therefore, Vice President Huang was really happy. Out of the 12 champions that have appeared so far, we've taken 8 of them. Although the total amount of them can't be compared to the final pinnacle competition, we've still gained a lot of face. As for the final champion of the summit tournament, I believe that as long as you take action, it shouldn't be a problem. What kind of person was the master of the 6 Tao? Countless eras ago, he was a true supreme overlord who had ruled over the primordial immortal devil era. The fact that he could leave his name behind proved that he was a supreme and terrifying existence. He was a supreme immortal master who was invincible among the peak overlords. However, such an existence, who was at the peak of terror below the true god level, had been directly suppressed by Lu Feng. After Lu Feng unleashed his supreme mystique, he was completely suppressed without a single bit of temper. Even the most terrifying immortal technique, the 6 Tao of reincarnation, which he had condensed to resist the supreme ruler, had been completely shattered by Lu Feng in the end. One could only imagine how powerful Lu Feng was. How could a terrifying existence, who could suppress the master of the sixth Tao be defeated by someone of the same generation as him. In this summit tournament, the most promising person should be the desolate emperor of the primordial divine king clan, who is at the peak of the king Tao. The desolate emperor has comprehended a supreme power, the primordial power, and he has reached the second stage of the demigod realm. I'm afraid that even Feather Yu Ronghua can't compare to him now. Therefore, it's normal for him to be ranked first by those who don't know of your existence. Lu Feng nodded gently. The desolate emperor's existence was indeed amazing. If he hadn't only comprehended a supreme power, Feather Yu Ronghua wouldn't have been able to compare to him. As for the second place, it's the young master of the Wan Yu clan, Wan Yueming. Lu Feng raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at Vice Principal Huang with a strange expression. Looking at Lu Feng's expression, Vice Principal Huang naturally understood what Lu Feng was thinking. He nodded gently and smiled. That's right. This Wan Yueming belongs to the Wan Yueming lineage, the descendant of the celestial God King, one of the 8 God King clans. Actually, I didn't expect that 2 young masters of the Divine King clan would come here to participate in a mere summit tournament. Moreover, these 2 young masters were truly monstrous geniuses. Although Wan Yueming can't compare to the desolate emperor, the king of massacre, according to the legends, he's a terrifying existence who is about to comprehend a supreme power. Many people believe that in this era of the War of the Kings, he will definitely be able to condense a supreme power and become the king of massacre. His realm is the same as the desolate emperor's, which is the second stage of the demigod realm. Therefore, he's ranked second. Lu Feng was silent for a moment before he gently nodded. Indeed, Wan Yueming's existence ranked second was nothing much. After all, he was the king of massacre at the second stage of the demigod realm. The third place should be Qi Liang. The strength that he displayed is definitely at the level of a monster. Although I don't know if he's an ordinary emperor or the king of massacre, his combat strength is really shocking. Therefore, although his true realm might not be at the demigod realm, many people still put him in the third place. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. However, he still smiled. Third place is not an exaggeration at all. Hearing Lu Feng's words, Vice Principal Huang was slightly taken aback. He looked at Lu Feng with a puzzled expression. At this time, Lu Feng naturally couldn't hide anything. He said solemnly, "You should know that I'm the Taboo King. I also possess 5 types of supreme power. Therefore, I can clearly sense the supreme power." Qi Liang's body definitely contained an unparalleled power. It might even be a type of supreme power at the peak. He should be at the level of the King of Massacre, which is a monster at the 6th stage of the King Path domain. He's in existence at the same level as the Desolate Emperor. However, his realm is definitely not at the demigod realm. Therefore, he shouldn't be a match for Wan Yueming. Therefore, third place is not an exaggeration. At this moment, Vice Principal Huang's eyes were filled with an extremely strange expression. He looked at Lu Feng, as if he couldn't believe that what Lu Feng had said was true. Seeing this, Lu Feng could only shrug helplessly. I don't know why so many monsters suddenly appeared. What these monsters have comprehended is the supreme power at the peak. However, this is the truth. I'm sure of this. Vice Principal Huang was silent. After a long time, he finally spoke again. The 4th and 5th place are considered to be tied. They are the young masters of the 2 great first-rate families, Beigong Tianxi and Nanming Shang. Both of them have the same status. They are the young masters of the 2 great first-rate families. Moreover, their talents are similar. They have both reached the level of a peak genius. Their strength is at the peak of the perfect stage. In addition, their cultivation methods are on par with the world. Therefore, they are tied for 4th place. The last one is you, Lu Feng. Of course, your performance is definitely at the level of a monster. It's a pity that you're a psychic. Psychics of the same level are no match for warriors. Therefore, in the eyes of these people, you're placed in the 6th position." Lu Feng smiled. Such a division was very correct. If he didn't understand everything, then he would definitely have made such a division. "Alright, Lu Feng. Tomorrow is the competition. This time, it won't be like the previous year's competition. There won't be a free-for-all. When the time comes, there will still be a promotion system. The 6 seeds will be separated into 6 positions. You won't meet outside of the top 8. Your opponent tomorrow is also a young master. However, he is the young master of the Gu family. He is at the middle stage of the perfect stage. I'm afraid that his talent is only at the level of a super genius in the Federation. This battle, it's up to you." After saying this, Vice Principal Huang left the place. Although he knew that Lu Feng wouldn't fail, he still couldn't help but come here to warn Lu Feng. Looking at Vice Principal Huang's back, Lu Feng's face was full of a strange smile. It was a happy smile. If others knew that they were going to face these terrifying experts of the younger generation, they would definitely be amazed and even frightened. It would be impossible for them to be in a good mood. However, this was nothing to Lu Fenglai. Because the stronger the opponent, the happier he was. He, Lu Feng, was never afraid of any challenge. He would never avoid any challenge. It starts tomorrow? I'm really looking forward to it. The pinnacle competition was the true pinnacle competition. It was the essence of the inter-school competition. Although most of the participants weren't students from the 3 major academies or the other major academies, their collisions far exceeded the limits of this campus. Many of the spectators didn't care about the competition between the academies. What they wanted was a passionate collision. Obviously, this was completely in line with the competition. Although the inter-school competition was also a promotion system, there was only one place where the competition would take place. It was located at the center of the capital university's plaza. It would be a huge arena that was famous in the Federation and the entire universe. All the participants had to take turns to compete. In a day's time, they might be able to complete all 16 matches in the first round at the same time. However, if the opponents were evenly matched, there might only be one match left. Therefore, the pinnacle competition could be completed in a few days or a few months. This was completely unpredictable. However, the spectators hoped that it could be completed in a few months. After all, those who could come to watch the competition were all people with time. They naturally hoped that the competition would last longer. The capital university's plaza was incomparably vast. It was about 1/5 the size of a third-grade city. In such a huge square, if it was slightly squeezed, it could accommodate at least 3 billion people at the same time. It was obvious that the number of people attracted by the Pinnacle Grand Competition this time around had exceeded 3 billion. When Lu Fenglai arrived, he realized that the plaza was already packed. There was no doubt that the plaza, which could accommodate 3 billion people, was now filled with spectators. When he saw this, Beigong Tianxi, who was beside Lu Feng, sucked in a deep breath. There was a look of fear on his face. It's true. There are so many people. We can't embarrass ourselves in front of such a huge number of people. Although ordinary people didn't know that they were the young masters of aristocratic families, if someone deliberately spread the news, everyone would know in an instant. If these 3 billion people knew, it wouldn't take long for the entire human race to know. Therefore, if they were to lose face here, they would lose face all the way home. Chapter 6:11. I didn't expect that the grand competition this time would attract so many people to come and watch. 3 billion people. This was almost comparable to Lu Feng's forbidden confrontation with the Demon King in the Medicine God Territory's Alchemist building. However, although there was not much difference in the number of people, the quality was far from comparable. After all, the people who had paid attention to him back then were basically warriors and telekinesis grandmasters. Now they were all ordinary people. Seeing Beigong Tianxi's slightly nervous expression, Lu Feng smiled gently. He really didn't expect this young master of a first-rate family to be nervous. Lu Feng stretched out his hand and patted Beigong Tianxi's shoulder gently. He said slowly, "This is also a kind of test. It can even be considered a real test. Under the pressure of 3 billion people, unleashing your full strength is a kind of breakthrough. This is a rare opportunity. You should seize it and not be afraid." Hearing Lu Feng's words, Beigong Tianxi was slightly stunned. However, he quickly understood what Lu Feng meant. A slight look of gratitude flashed in his eyes. Beigong Tianxi nodded gently and didn't say anything else. Although this pinnacle competition was really grand, there were no complicated formalities. This was because this kind of confrontation was completely in line with the definition of a warrior: straightforward. The person presiding over the pinnacle competition was no longer a demigod. This was because a demigod was nothing at all. If any of these people who participated in the pinnacle competition went all out, they would have the strength of a demigod. Therefore, demigods really couldn't control the situation. This time around, the one who walked out was an aged teacher. Lu Feng surveyed him and came to a sudden realization. This was actually a god-level existence. He was at least a high-level god-level existence. He didn't expect that this competition would have a high-level god-level existence as the referee. This was very extravagant, very extravagant. This is a teacher from the previous generation of Capital University. He's a god-level existence. I didn't expect him to appear. After hearing Beigong Tianxi's introduction, Lu Feng nodded in understanding. If the current teacher had the strength of a god, then it was indeed terrifying. This was basically comparable to the Federal University. It should be known that even with such a powerful force as the Federal University, there were only a few teachers who were at the level of deities. The first battle is a clash between the young masters of two aristocratic families. These two young masters belong to the Capital University and the Government University, respectively. They were the young masters of the top 20 first-rate families. Their aptitudes were on par with the Federation's freaks, and their strength wasn't any weaker. Almost all of them are at the perfect stage. The clash between the two young masters should be quite exciting. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. He was also watching the battle with great interest at this moment. Perhaps for others it was just a show to watch, but for Lu Fenglai it was completely different. He could see traces of their family's cultivation methods from the clash between the two young masters. This was the biggest reason why Lu Feng participated in this competition. Of course, in addition to this, Lu Feng also had other ideas. It was just that his ideas were too crazy and would shock everyone. After the referee announced the start of the battle, the two young masters didn't hold back at all. Perhaps they didn't expect so many spectators to watch, so they didn't hold back at all. For glory and the face of their families, they almost used their strongest combat power. The scene was undoubtedly extremely spectacular. The collision between the peak of two perfect stage warriors was enough to completely destroy a small planet. If they were allowed to fight wantonly, perhaps even a third-grade life planet would not be able to withstand it and would be completely abandoned. Fortunately, the existence of this arena was extremely mysterious. It seemed to be filled with all kinds of blessings. The powerful attacks of perfect stage warriors couldn't damage the arena at all. This was very terrifying. The existence of this arena was condensed by a super expert from Capital University. It belongs to the category of a 9th-grade artifact. It is very famous in the Federation and even in the universe. Lu Feng nodded slightly. For the first time, he felt a little serious about Capital University's heritage. Previously, he thought that Capital University was a university organization set up by the Federation government or those aristocratic families to fight against the Federal University. There shouldn't be much of a heritage in it. However, seeing the existence of this arena made Lu Feng completely change his mind. A 9th-grade artifact. Even in the entire universe, it was considered an extremely terrifying existence. Perhaps there weren't many of such items even among the first-rate aristocratic families. Moreover, all of them were used as heritage items to stabilize the family's luck. There really weren't any that could be taken out directly like Capital University. Without any restrictions, the collision between the two young masters on the arena had reached a terrifying level. Every move could cause spatial turbulence. If it weren't for the fact that the power of the arena itself was too terrifying, the 3 billion people in the audience would have been completely annihilated by the aftermath. Finally, when they fought to the point of madness, Lu Feng's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. This was how he looked when he was serious. Lu Feng knew that the real battle had begun. The heirloom techniques of the two families had appeared. Serious. Lu Feng was really serious. Others were looking at the intensity of the battle between the two, but he was looking at the rhythm and understanding of the two young masters' movements. His expression was extremely calm at this moment. His eyes kept shaking. Kamihara's sea of consciousness was churning as if it could see through everything. The terrifying comprehension ability of Kamihara's sea of consciousness became very prominent at this moment. Its effect was unimaginable. Finally, after fighting for close to half an hour, the victor was decided. This time, the winner was the young master of the aristocratic family that Capital University had invited. As for the other person, he was defeated by a narrow margin. While everyone was discussing the collision of the two young masters, Lu Feng had a satisfied look on his face. Others only saw the intense battle and the intense atmosphere. However, from the battle that had lasted for half an hour, Lu Feng saw many mysterious existences. And these things were extremely important for him to condense his own cultivation method. In the following period of time, Lu Feng continued to observe the clashes between the young masters. At this moment, his experience was also increasing rapidly. It seems that if I have time in the future, I should fight more with God's Spirit. This is the only way to condense my technique, only Lord, into a God-level technique after I become a God Spirit. Lu Feng had already made up his mind. When the time was right, he would clash with the God Spirits of the other races. He would understand the mysteries of these God-level techniques from the battles with them. In just half a day, there had already been 6 battles. At this time, Lu Feng finally understood why many people called the inter-school competition the grand competition of the 3 academies. This was because in the summit confrontation, only one of the first 6 matches was won by the other academies. The other 5 matches were all won by the 3 great academies. Among them, the Federal University won 2 battles, Capital University won 2 battles, and Government University won 1 battle. It seems that Capital University's slogan of wanting to surpass the Federal University this time was not for nothing. Their performance now is already very outstanding. They really have the ability to compete with the Federal University. Many people said such words with strange expressions. However, after hearing these words, some people who understood the situation sneered. These people more or less knew about the background of the Federal University. They naturally understood that this so-called slogan was only a slogan. If they waited for all 16 battles to be over, the result would be different. When the referee announced the 7th battle, the audience was silent. Then, there was a burst of cheers and discussions. This was because a seeded contestant finally appeared in the 7th battle. Lu Feng, it's time for you to perform. Don't let your opponent be too miserable. Otherwise, it won't be good. Lu Feng, we believe in you. Do your best. At least charge into the top 3 and show those who have denied your strength that you are the real number 1. Beside him, there were voices of support from the students. When he heard this, Lu Feng smiled and nodded lightly. In the next moment, he seemed to be stepping on a staircase in the void. Step by step, he walked into the void and walked into the arena. Lu Feng's appearance could be said to have attracted the attention of countless people. Among them, the ones who paid the most attention to Lu Feng were not the teachers or the audience, but the geniuses. In the capital university's camp, an incomparably noble young man looked at Lu Feng in the arena. The corner of his mouth revealed a strange smile. This was a dangerous smile that made people shudder. He was the Desolate Emperor. Desolate Emperor, is it him? Beside the Desolate Emperor, a similarly noble and terrifying existence spoke softly. There was a hint of inquiry and seriousness in his voice. The Desolate Emperor looked at Lu Feng and finally nodded gently. Wan Yueming, it should be him. Other than him, I can't find any other psychic by the name of Lu Feng who has such shocking strength. Hearing this, Wan Yueming was silent. He was completely silent. After a long time, he sighed slowly. It seems that this time I'm really going to be sad. I thought that after becoming the king of massacre, I would be able to shine. But who would have thought that you would also appear in this arena? If that's the case, I can still endure being in second place. After all, my opponent is you, the Desolate Emperor. I believe that my family won't say anything about me. But who would have thought that other than you, there would be an even more terrifying emperor? It seems that this time, I shouldn't have agreed to the request of the government university and appeared here. Chapter 612. Hearing Wan Yueming's words, the Desolate Emperor chuckled. Didn't you come here to fight me? Why are you saying these things now? Wan Yueming, stop putting on an act. I know that you've been burning with passion for a long time now. You've been longing for a good battle. Wan Yueming fell silent. After a long while, he smiled. It seems like you know me best. An emperor is an emperor. In the future, we definitely won't be his match. But that might not be the case now. He's only at the peak of the perfect stage. Such strength isn't undefeatable to us, who are in the second stage of the demigod realm. This is our last chance. It's also our only chance. I believe that it won't be long before an emperor breaks through. After becoming a demigod, I'm afraid we won't be his match. His improvement speed is too fast. It's already reached a terrifying level. He's not any worse than his ancestor, the human king. So, this is our only chance. The Desolate Emperor nodded. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. He knew that Wan Yueming was right. The future belonged to the emperor. They were destined to be his foils. So, this time, he had to seize the opportunity. A supreme king. Only by condensing two supreme powers can one become a supreme king. I really don't understand. Lu Feng has only been cultivating for less than 2 years. But in 2 years, in addition to completing a shocking transformation, he actually comprehended 5 supreme powers, and these 5 supreme powers are the pinnacle of supreme powers. How did he do it? Wan Yueming shrugged his shoulders lightly, indicating that he didn't know either. No wonder he said that his goal had always been to surpass the human king in the massacre abyss. At that time, many people looked at him in a joking manner. But now, it seems that he might really achieve it. Besides these 2 invincible monsters, Qi Liang was also paying close attention. He knew that he wasn't Lu Feng's match. Because these words came from his teacher, the person he respected the most. Qi Liang had always believed in his teacher's words. Since his teacher said no, he had no choice but to believe it even though he didn't want to admit it. The reason why he paid so much attention to Lu Feng was because he wanted to see how big the gap was between him and the number 1 person of the younger generation. Lu Feng stood on the stage without any emotions. He could feel the attention of these 3 billion people, and he could feel the gazes of those powerhouses. However, what Lu Feng paid the most attention to were 3 pairs of eyes. After a brief glance, Lu Feng nodded in understanding. Looks like you've already become the king of slaughter. This year's inter-school competition is really interesting. There are actually 3 kings of slaughter. Interesting. With just a glance, Lu Feng saw through everything about Wan Yueming. After all, the supreme power in his body couldn't be concealed at all. Therefore, Lu Feng easily saw through everything. However, what Lu Feng cared about the most wasn't Qi Liang, nor was it Wan Yueming, who had just broken through to become the king of slaughter. What he really cared about was the similarly young and noble existence beside Wan Yueming. The desolate emperor. Lu Feng's eyes were completely fixed on the desolate emperor. At this moment, his eyes were filled with a slightly turbulent expression. He could clearly feel the terrifying supreme fluctuations hidden in the desolate emperor's body. This was definitely a peak realm. If it was the previous feather Yu Ronghua, he probably wouldn't have been a match for the desolate emperor. As if he felt Lu Feng's gaze, the desolate emperor revealed an awe-inspiring expression at this moment. The moment he and Lu Feng's eyes met, the void began to ripple. "I will wait for you." Looking at the desolate emperor, Lu Feng said something that confused the hundreds of millions of viewers. After that, he no longer looked in any other direction. This time, Lu Feng's opponent was a genius. Furthermore, it was a genius from the capital university. Without a doubt, this kind of draw was really miserable for the capital university. This could also be considered the first clash between the capital university and the federal university in the pinnacle competition. Looking at his opponent, Lu Feng smiled gently. He could feel that his opponent wasn't a young master of an aristocratic family. He should really be an ordinary student. Although his strength wasn't bad, compared to those young masters, he was still a level lower. While Lu Feng was sizing up his opponent was also quietly looking at Lu Feng. Although Lu Feng was listed as the 6th seed, he was only a psychic master after all. In the same class, a psychic master's existence couldn't be compared to a martialist. Of course, this was before becoming a god. If it was after becoming a god, then it would be completely different. "You're the 6th seed, Lu Feng?" To be honest, I'm incomparably convinced by the top 5 seeds, but I'm not convinced by you. Before Lu Feng could speak, that student beat him to it. His voice wasn't concealed at all. In an instant, it spread throughout the world, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. At this moment, many people were slightly paying attention. They were all starting to get excited. Everyone understood that once ridiculing before the battle, the intensity of the battle would reach a terrifying level. Because regardless of whether it was the one mocking or the one being mocked, neither could lose. Whoever lost would be utterly humiliated. Unfortunately, facing the opponent's ridicule, Lu Feng still acted as before, as if he didn't hear anything before. "Since you've admitted it, then when I attack later, I'll be a little gentler. After all, you're also a genius of the Federation. In the future, the Federation and the human race will still need you to work hard." After saying this, his aura started to rise. At this moment, the crowd started to boil. On the other hand, the divine spirit judge from Capital University frowned slightly. He looked at his own student with slight dissatisfaction. After all, his words were a little too high-profile. However, the cheers from the crowd had already resounded through the sky, so it wasn't convenient for him to say anything at this moment. Therefore, after glancing at his student, the divine spirit judge finally announced the start of the battle. In an instant, the student from Capital University, whose aura had reached its peak, disappeared. His speed was completely in line with the standards of a perfect stage warrior. When he attacked, it was the most terrifying killing move, and it was the fastest way to kill. The next moment, when he appeared again, everyone was confused. That was because he was quietly standing in front of Lu Feng. His expression was one of bewilderment, an indescribable expression. Lu Feng was still standing in the same spot. He looked at his opponent in front of him and smiled lightly. Then, he turned around and slowly walked down the arena. This time, the crowd was silent. No one knew what had happened. "What's wrong? Why isn't he moving? What happened?" Everyone was puzzled. However, the existences above the perfect stage all took a deep breath. Their eyes were filled with fear, horror, and even horror as they looked at the arena. So terrifying. Really, so terrifying. This was the unanimous voice of everyone who saw everything clearly. They didn't expect such a shocking scene to happen in the pinnacle competition. This was simply unbelievable and unimaginable. Just now, that seemed to be the legendary, one of the geniuses from the 3 academies looked in Lu Feng's direction, his eyes filled with fear and disbelief. There was some hesitation in his voice, because he really wasn't sure if what he saw was real. That's right. That should be the legendary, most common and most difficult to see, soul shock, which is exclusive to psychics. Soul shock was one of the techniques of psychics. It was born out of the supreme, immortal technique of the past. It was ordinary and didn't have earth-shattering destructive power. However, it wasn't born for destruction in the first place. Back then, the existence of soul shock was only researched to give psychics a chance to fight martial artists in close combat. Unfortunately, although it was thoroughly developed, it didn't have much use in a real battle. Soul intimidation. This is completely a result of the suppression of those low-level existences by high-level psychics. The conditions to use it are too harsh, and it's extremely difficult to succeed. Unless you have absolute confidence in yourself, who would use a cultivation method that you have no confidence in. Once soul shock was used, the opponent's soul would be completely shaken, causing him to be completely suppressed in an instant and lose any fighting ability. If the difference in level was too great, it could even shatter the opponent's soul. There was no doubt that this was considered a very frightening psyche master cultivation method for a long time. It was a pity that there were too many restrictions when using soul intimidation. First of all, it required the caster and the opponent to be in close contact. Moreover, there was a huge gap between the souls of the 2 existences. After using soul shock, if it couldn't shock the opponent in one move, the caster would be annihilated by the opponent's killing intent in an instant. It could be said that if one didn't have extreme confidence in themselves, no one would dare to use it lightly. After all, a failure meant that in the following confrontation, there would be no defense at all. If a psychic's existence wasn't defended, it would be equivalent to letting the opponent kill him wantonly. No one would have thought that in this kind of peak confrontation, this kind of soul shock would actually appear. Unexpectedly, on such an important stage, in such a way. Silence. Unlike the clamor of the ordinary people, all the students were endlessly silent. They sucked in countless breaths of cold air. At this moment, they finally understood how terrifying Lu Feng was. To be able to completely suppress a beginner perfect stage warrior using soul shock, his strength was definitely not comparable to the strength of a first-tier or second-tier demigod. His strength was probably not inferior to the 4th or 5th seeded young masters of the 2 great first-tier families. He might even be stronger. After a moment, endless cheers rose into the air. Although there was no fierce collision, the ordinary people who knew everything felt that this battle was not in vain. After all, this kind of scene was almost impossible to see at any time. Of course, there were those who were excited and those who were sad. The saddest and most embarrassed were the students and teachers of Capital University. They still remembered how their genius student had previously provoked Lu Feng in the arena. Chapter 6:13. In the face of his provocation, Lu Feng didn't react in the slightest. He didn't even bother to reply. At that time, many people thought that Lu Feng was afraid. However, what happened next was a slap to their faces. Lu Feng didn't reply not because he was afraid. Everything was because Lu Feng didn't care. He simply didn't bother to reply or express his opinion. In his eyes, his opponent was just an ant that he could casually slaughter. Why should he care about such an ant? No one paid attention to the loser anymore. After all, he was the one who was mocked and slapped in the face. This was his sorrow and he deserved it. The ripples brought about by Lu Feng soon subsided. This was because there were two more clashes between non-seed. Naturally, their clashes were much more exciting than Lu Feng's battle. After all, there was little difference between the two. Standing quietly in his own area, Lu Feng watched the battle between the two without blinking. His expression was becoming more and more satisfied. Including his own battle, there were already 9 battles that had ended. Lu Feng really learned a lot from these 8 battles. These were the most precious treasures. Finally, the 10th battle appeared. From this battle onwards, the seeded contestants would appear one after another. The first to appear was one of the people Lu Feng paid attention to, Qi Liang. In the eyes of ordinary people, Qi Liang was worthy of being the number 1 seed. Therefore, his appearance once again ignited the atmosphere of the audience. Qi Liang's opponent was a young master from an aristocratic family invited by the government university. Although this young master's strength was very shocking, he was still very weak. However, he also understood that the gap between him and Qi Liang was really too big. In order to perform better and not lose face in front of these 3 billion people, he used all his strength as soon as he came up. Unfortunately, the result was a shocking 1 strike. It was merely 1 strike. At this moment, Qi Liang finally erupted with his strongest strength. He was actually at the peak of the perfect stage. He was the king of massacre at the peak of the perfect stage. Without a doubt, such a scene made everyone go crazy. The king of slaughter at the pinnacle of the perfect stage was a terrifying existence that could slay gods. No one would have thought that a student from an ordinary school would have such shocking strength and realm. This was unbelievable. Qi Liang's victory was too easy and simple. Just like Lu Feng. If what Lu Feng had displayed before was a kind of transcendent self-confidence, then Qi Liang's victory this time was a kind of domineering interpretation. At this moment, he seemed to be saying that he also had extraordinary strength. He was not inferior to Lu Fenglai in any way. Young Master Lu, it seems like this mysterious king of massacre is provoking you. Seeing Qi Liang look at Lu Feng one last time, Beigong Tianxi, who was beside Lu Feng, smiled and said. Hearing this, Lu Feng only smiled and did not say anything. If Lu Feng's previous performance was shocking, it allowed Lu Feng to surpass Qi Liang and become the number 1 seed in the eyes of ordinary people. Qi Liang's next move proved that he was stronger than Lu Feng. After all, Lu Feng's opponent was just an ordinary student, but Qi Liang's opponent was the young master. In the 11th round, Beigong Tianxi stepped up. His opponent was also the young master of an aristocratic family. This young master was ranked in the top 10 among the first-rate aristocratic families. Power was definitely terrifying. If he had not met Beigong Tianxi, he would have easily entered the 2nd or even the 3rd round of the competition. However, everything was just an if. He still met Beigong Tianxi in the 1st round. The might of the Yellow Springs Atlas was indeed shocking. This was the strongest skill of the Beigong family in the land of Yellow Springs. At this moment, Beigong Tianxi had used it to its fullest extent. In less than 10 minutes, he had completely defeated his opponent. This battle was also known as the most exciting battle so far. After all, the strength of the two opponents was really terrifying. Beigong Tianxi returned indifferently. Fighting under the gaze of 3 billion people was undoubtedly a kind of pressure, a kind of motivation, and a kind of test, and Beigong Tianxi had already passed the test. In the 12th round, Nanming young master, Nanming Shang, stepped up. His opponent was just an ordinary student from another school. His strength was average, so he finished the battle in less than a minute. This battle was the most regrettable for Lu Feng. From the beginning to the end, Nanming Shang did not use the Nanming family's Nanming art. However, Lu Feng believed that as the 2nd round began, he would definitely be able to see it. The 13th and 14th rounds were all clashes between young masters of aristocratic families. They continued to display extreme clashes and hot-bloodedness, making the audience feel satisfied. By the time the 14th round ended, it was already past 5 in the afternoon. According to the usual time, it should have ended by now. However, for some reason, the battle was not over. It was still going on. Of course, to the ordinary people, this did not matter. After all, they were very happy to be able to continue watching. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the last 2 rounds are about to end. This was the thought of many people who knew what was going on. There were still 2 people who did not go up. And these 2 were the real first and second seeds. Their opponents were just ordinary young masters. Then, the battle would end in an instant. As expected, the real situation was as such. When the 2 of them went up, many people did not think much of it. After all, whether it was Desolate Emperor or Wan Yueming, these people did not know about them. Before this, even the aristocratic family's disciples did not know about their existence. Therefore, when they went up, they were seen as one-sided. Of course, the people who fell down were Desolate Emperor and Wan Yueming. However, when the battle began, it completely overturned everyone's understanding. Because this time, the ending was really one-sided. It was completely one-sided. Facing the young masters of aristocratic families, whether it was Desolate Emperor or Wan Yueming, they only waved their arms. Everything had ended just like that. Domineering, too domineering. Until now, there were only 2 people who were able to finish the battle in such a clean manner. They were Lu Feng and Qi Liang. Now, the appearance of the Desolate Emperor and Wan Yueming once again proved this point. They were equally relaxed. Even compared to Lu Feng, who was only facing ordinary students, they were facing the real young masters of aristocratic families. This scene clearly caused everyone to be shocked and horrified. The day's battle was finally over. Other than the young masters who took a longer time to fight, the other battles ended in a short period of time. As for Lu Feng and the other 3, it ended in just a thought. Such speed was truly frightening. The first day of the Pinnacle Grand Competition ended just like that. The result was unexpected, but also very exciting. That night, Lu Feng returned to his dormitory. He did not celebrate with Lulu and the others. Instead, he chose to slowly think about it alone. Everything he had learned during the day was really precious. If Lu Feng had to comprehend those experiences by himself, it would have taken him a lot of time. Now that he had such an opportunity, he naturally had to quickly comprehend it. He did not sleep the entire night. However, when they gathered the next day, Lu Feng was still in high spirits. Once again, they arrived at the square. This time, the square, which could accommodate 3 billion people, was already full. The upper limit was 3 billion people. It could not accommodate any more. Therefore, when the plaza was full, no one was allowed to enter. Compared to yesterday, when he saw 3 billion people, although Beigong Tianci was still a little shocked, it was not as obvious as yesterday. The second day of the grand competition will be the top 16. The 6 seeded contestants will still not meet. However, I think that starting tomorrow, or even this afternoon, the seeded contestants will fight each other. Lu Feng smiled and nodded. To be honest, he was looking forward to the earlier clashes. After a night of accumulation, Lu Feng understood a principle. If he wanted to truly comprehend those profound mysteries, he would have to clash with other experts. Only in this way would he be able to comprehend those mysteries in the shortest time possible. Among them, only the Desolate Emperor was worthy of his attention. As for the others, even the King of Massacre, Wan Yueming, was not enough. After all, he had just entered the King of Massacre. Although his cultivation was the same as the Desolate Emperor's, he was still lacking in terms of commanding ability. Therefore, he could not let Lu Feng fight seriously. Alright, it's about to start. Remember not to be careless. Otherwise, as a seeded contestant, it would be extremely embarrassing to be eliminated when facing an unseeded contestant. Beigong Tianci smiled gently with a strong sense of confidence. Although he knew that he was not a match for the desolate Emperor Wan Yueming and Lu Feng, the three young masters of the Divine King clan. He was not even a match for Qi Liang. However, he was confident that he would win against the others. Even if he was facing Nanming Shang, he would not be afraid of retreating. Therefore, he would not fail. At least, before meeting these four monsters, he would not fail. Finally, the battles began. This time, the Federal University took up 5 of the top 16 spots. The Capital University took up 4 spots, and the Government University took up 3 spots. The 3 great academies took up a total of 12 spots. This was enough to show how terrifying the 3 great academies were. The first round of battle was between the young masters of the aristocratic families. At this moment, other than Qi Liang, the rest of the 16 people were all young masters of aristocratic families. Therefore, any battle would be a battle between the young masters of the aristocratic families. Naturally, all the young masters were extremely cautious and serious about such a battle. After all, although it was just a normal battle between them, behind them stood the various aristocratic families. The battle between them had been given a sacred meaning. It was the meaning of a battle between 2 aristocratic families. Therefore, they would not allow themselves to fail. Chapter 6:14. From this time onwards, the intensity of the collisions was beyond imagination. Basically, every collision was a real fight. If this arena was not a terrifying weapon at the level of a 9th-grade divine object, then the entire Capital University and even the entire capital city would have been reduced to ashes. However, even with so many guards, the crowd could still feel the terror and intensity of the clashes. In the void, some spatial fragments began to faintly appear. Those who could reach this stage were at least mid-grade perfect martialists. Although they might only be ordinary geniuses or super geniuses of the Federation, once they gave it their all, they would be able to unleash a terrifying killing spree at the demigod level. A demigod-level killing spree could faintly cause the void to tremble and shatter. The 2 young masters didn't hold back in the slightest. Their martial path avatars, various cultivation techniques, and all their trump cards were unleashed mercilessly. The intensity of their battle made people's hearts palpitate. Countless drops of blood splattered everywhere, covering the void and the arena. This scene didn't bring fear to the spectators. Instead, it brought even crazier and more terrifying shout. Fight, fight, fight. They fought until they went crazy, but they still wanted to fight even more crazily. Finally, after colliding for more than an hour, when the heavens and earth had been destroyed, the final result was revealed. However, when they saw the state of the 2 young masters, everyone understood that although one of them had won, the other young master had also lost. This was because both he and his opponent had used supreme techniques at the same time. Although they had barely won, the final outcome was a Pyrrhic victory. In the future, even the victor would have to recuperate for a period of time. It's really tragic, Lu Feng sighed softly as he looked at the miserable state of the 2 young masters. This time, he had comprehended more and more things from the collision, and they were even more useful. Even so, Lu Feng still sighed softly at the miserable state of the 2 young masters. When he heard Lu Feng's words, Beigong Tianci only shook his head slightly. Young Master Lu, you still don't understand the rules of a first-rate family. Lu Feng was slightly taken aback. He glanced at Beigong Tianci and remained silent. Beigong Tianci looked at the 2 heavily injured men and sighed deeply. Young Master Lu, the existence of the Lu family is fully deserving of the title of number 1 human race, number 1 in the universe. As for the other Divine King clans, with the exception of the first Emperor and the Yu clan, the other 5 Divine King clans are more or less the same. They don't have any ranking, so there is no need to go crazy for the ranking. However, a first-rate aristocratic family is different. There were more than 100 first-rate families in the entire human race. However, the ranking of these families was not fixed. If you're not careful, you'll be replaced by someone else. Therefore, even those high and mighty first-rate aristocratic families that are ranked in the top 10 are actually very careful. The ranking of the aristocratic families is based on many things. Among them is the aptitude and strength of the younger generation. This is also one of the factors that affect the ranking of the aristocratic families. Therefore, even if it is a clash between the younger generation, even if it is an unimportant battle, once they meet, they will fight until the last moment. They will only stop when one side falls. This is the glory and sorrow of aristocratic families. Lu Feng nodded gently. However, he sighed softly in his heart. He knew that this was the sorrow of a first-rate aristocratic family. The Lu family was the #1 aristocratic family in the world. Its foundation was a terrifying force that even the pinnacle overlord races would fear. However, the first-rate aristocratic families were not like this. Although their ancestors had condensed the sacred truth body, their ancestors were not the ultimate powerhouses that could suppress everything. Therefore, the resources left behind were limited. If they wanted to develop, they needed to obtain more and better resources. Obviously, this ranking was related to their development. Therefore, for the development of their families, they had to fight for a ranking regardless of anything. They had to get their families to the front and obtain more resources to develop their families. The clash between the younger generation was also the standard to measure the strength of an aristocratic family. Therefore, even if two young masters who had no relationship with each other met, unless there was a huge gap between the aristocratic families behind them, they would have to fight to the end. It would only end when one of them fell. This is indeed the helplessness of aristocratic families. If there is no pinnacle existence to suppress everything, then they will have to struggle and work hard on their own. The first 2 rounds of battle were between the young masters of aristocratic families. However, one of the young masters from the Federal University had already been defeated. His opponent was a young master ranked in the top 20. Naturally, a young master ranked in the 30s or 40s would not be able to defeat a young master ranked in the top 20. Therefore, it was reasonable for him to fail. This time, one of the 5 young masters from the Federal University had already been defeated. Of course, Lu Feng also knew that besides him and Beigong Tianxi, the other 2 young masters would probably be defeated as well. In the 3rd round, Beigong Tianxi was up. His opponent was also a young master ranked in the top 10. There was also a huge barrier among the first-rate aristocratic families. That was the 3 pinnacle aristocratic families and the other first-rate aristocratic families. Although the 4th place was only 1 place away from the 3rd place, there was a fundamental difference between the 2 aristocratic families. Naturally, the gap between the top 10 and the Beigong family was indescribable. Beigong Tianxi was still strong. The battle ended in 15 minutes. Of course, Lu Feng also knew that Beigong Tianxi was holding back. If he had used all his strength and trump cards, his opponent, the young master of the aristocratic family, would have been completely defeated in a few minutes. At this moment, the 3 rounds of the competition had ended. 1 person from the Capital University, 1 person from the Federal University, and 1 person from the Government University. The number of people who would be able to enter the top 8 was basically decided. Although the battles had not ended, everyone knew that after the first 2 rounds, everything was settled. After all, the 5 people who would be fighting in the next round were all true seeded contestants. None of them should be defeated. The 2 people from the Federal University were Lu Feng and Beigong Tianxi. The 2 people from the Government University were Wan Yueming and a young master from an aristocratic family. The 2 people from the Capital University were Huang Di and a young master from an aristocratic family. As for the other universities, they were Nanming Shang and Qi Liang. This time, the existence of the 3 great academies each occupied 2 people. This was also within the expectations of many people. The 3 universities did not care about this result. This was because in their eyes, only the final championship was what they pursued. Everything else was insignificant. Among them, the capital university was the most confident. After all, Huangdi's existence was a whole level higher than these people. Therefore, they were confident that the final championship would be theirs. However, these were only their thoughts and belief. The real situation might not be so. At least before the end of the battle, the top 8 had not been completely determined. In the 4th round, Qi Liang took the stage. He was still as strong as before. One move. Just one move was enough to completely suppress his opponent. Once again, everyone was shocked and speechless. After all, this was a battle for the top 8. Being able to enter the top 16 had already proven one's strength. However, in such a battle where one's strength was considered to be at the peak, such a shocking scene still occurred. One move. It was still one move. This was no longer something that could be described as terrifying. The moment Qi Liang walked down the stage, countless people cheered. That kind of crazy shout had already resounded throughout the world. It had already made the whole world boil. At that moment, Qi Liang was like a god in the eyes of many people. He was like a supreme immortal who had descended to the mortal world. Qi Liang was indifferent as he walked down the stage quietly. From beginning to end, his gaze had only been directed in one direction, and that was Lu Feng's position. Qi Liang knew that although he could not go against the Huangdi or Wan Yueming, the only person he truly valued and needed to give his all to was the Emperor. Only the Emperor, Lu Feng. Young Master Lu, is he provoking you? Beigong Tianxi smiled faintly as he watched Qi Liang's departing figure. When he heard this, Lu Feng shrugged lightly, indicating that he did not know either. However, at this moment, Lu Feng's eyes still carried a kind of indifference. To Lu Fenglai, none of this was a problem. Nothing was a challenge. He simply did not care if others were provoking him. In his eyes, in his heart, the only true opponent was himself. Perhaps I should think of a way to make him fight. Otherwise, it would be very boring if it ended like this. In the 5th round, Nanming Shang stepped up. His opponent was a young master from the capital university. Naturally, as the 4th or 5th seeded seed, Nanming Shang would not lose before meeting Lu Feng and the others. Compared to Beigong Tianxi, Nanming Shang's victory was much faster and simpler. The strength of the Underworld Atlas lies in its control. The intent of the Underworld Atlas is to create an environment or even a world that belongs exclusively to oneself. However, its lethality cannot be compared to the Nanming Manual. The Nanming Manual is a supreme killing technique created for the sole purpose of killing. No wonder the Nanming family is known as the burial ground, Lu Feng exclaimed in admiration. In terms of lethality, the South Nether secret art was indeed a notch stronger. The supreme murderous aura accumulated within it was a power that was completely born for the sake of killing. It was simply the most heaven-defying murderous power. Beigong Tianxi did not refute Lu Feng's words. Indeed, in terms of killing power, the Beigong family's Underworld Atlas could not compare to the Nanming family's Nanming Manual. However, this did not mean that the Yellow Springs catalog was inferior to the South Nether incantation. The two could only be said to have their own advantages and disadvantages. Chapter 6:15. Young Master Lu, you should be the second last to enter the arena. It's Wan Mingyue's turn soon. I believe his battle result should be the same as Qi Liang's, where he defeated his opponent in an instant. Otherwise, his monstrous title would be wasted. It could be said that as long as one of the 4 monstrous geniuses did it, the other 3 would have to do it no matter what. This was a different kind of confrontation, a clash between monstrous geniuses. Just as these people thought, Wan Yueming did not give his opponent any chance at all. He defeated his opponent in an instant. It was a complete instant defeat. The entire arena was silent. Everyone was speechless. Everyone stared blankly at Wan Yueming. They could not believe that the world-shaking attack just now, the extreme splendor of that instant, was actually emitted from this young body. They really could not imagine it. "Is it because the opponent is too weak?" an audience member muttered to himself. However, even he did not believe his own word. If the opponent was too weak, then how could he enter the top 8 in the competition? Those who could enter this place were all the most outstanding existences among their peers. They were all truly terrifying geniuses or monstrous geniuses. Their accumulations were abnormally terrifying. Challenging someone of a higher realm was a piece of cake for them. Therefore, it was impossible for them to be weak. It was impossible for them to be trash. But, they were at the same level, but they were suppressed so easily and thoroughly. There was no suspense at all. They were completely suppressed. This was not because they were too weak. It only meant that the existence they were facing had exceeded the limits of their age. Who is that person? Why have I never heard of his existence? How terrifying! What an unparalleled young man! I believe his strength is not the slightest bit inferior to the 7 young sovereigns. He is at least a young sovereign. Countless people exclaimed in admiration. They were filled with all kinds of emotions. It was difficult to describe the fear in their hearts. Finally, Lu Feng appeared amidst the discussions of countless people. His appearance caused the endless clamor to stagnate for a moment. After all, Lu Feng's existence was very terrifying in the eyes of many people. He was the 2nd seed previously. Therefore, when Lu Feng appeared, there was a brief moment of silence. But in the next moment, endless cheers rang out. Although the previous performances of those people were very shocking and almost suppressed all of Lu Feng's limelight, when Lu Feng appeared, many existences were still shocked. As they watched Lu Feng slowly walk to the center of the stage, the 3 monstrous geniuses' gazes froze. In the hearts of these 3 people, their true opponents were not each other. Although they were all existences of the same level, with their pride, how could they admit that an existence of the same level was enough to rival them? Therefore, even though they were all kings of slaughter, their true opponents had always been the supreme kings, the monstrous geniuses of this epoch. As for Lu Feng, he was clearly at the pinnacle of everything. His existence was the ultimate goal that everyone should pursue. Therefore, Lu Feng's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Can we make him show some of his strength this time? Wan Yueming looked at Desolate Emperor and asked with a playful expression. Upon hearing this, Desolate Emperor smiled helplessly. Wan Yueming, can't you use your brain a little? I think you're putting on an act a little too much. Don't you know how to think about such a simple matter? The Emperor's strength is not any weaker than ours. He will only be stronger. Will you and I be able to show our strength when facing such an opponent? Wan Yueming shrugged slightly and still acted the same as before. Upon seeing this, Desolate Emperor sighed helplessly and looked at Lu Feng with full attention. Lu Feng's opponent was also a young master of an aristocratic family. In fact, he was a noble young master of an aristocratic family who was ranked in the top 20. He was different from the ignorant disciple that Lu Feng had encountered previously. He was a young master and his knowledge was naturally incomparable to ordinary people. Although Lu Feng was only a psychic, he had studied and paid attention to Lu Feng's previous battles. Therefore, he clearly knew that he was no match for Lu Feng. In fact, he was far from being a match for Lu Feng. However, he represented the glory of his family. Even if his opponent was the Divine King, he could not take a step back. Therefore, although he knew that he was no match for Lu Feng, he still had to face Lu Feng head-on. He could not back down. The god-level judge descended. Looking at the two of them, he nodded lightly and said slowly, "Are you two ready?" Lu Feng was silent. He smiled and nodded. His opponent was nervous. His pupils constricted and he nodded. Seeing this, the judge softly announced the start of the battle. At this moment, everyone held their breaths. They quietly watched the two of them, waiting for an earth-shattering scene to appear. Looking at Lu Feng, the young master of the aristocratic family did not dare to make a move. He knew that he was no match for Lu Feng. All he could do was wait. Wait for Lu Feng to make a mistake. Only then would he have a chance. Unfortunately, Lu Feng was also standing in the same spot. It seemed like he had no intention of attacking. Time passed very quickly. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive. However, no one in the audience opened their mouths to shout. This was because they knew that the two people in this battle had extremely noble statuses. They were not people that they could easily curse or mock. Looking at his nervous opponent, Lu Feng sighed softly. He knew that his previous performance had been too strong. It had made his opponent's soul tremble and feel an incomparable fear. If that had not been the case, he would have made a move long ago, given his status as the young master of an aristocratic family. However, this could not go on. Besides, Lu Feng still had his own plans. Finally, Lu Feng took a step forward. However, at this moment, the young master of the aristocratic family suddenly took a step back. His face was filled with fear. The surrounding audience took a deep breath. Sensing these changes, Lu Feng smiled helplessly. He stopped in his tracks and looked at his opponent. Then, he said slowly, "You don't have to worry about anything. Make your move." After hearing Lu Feng's public declaration, if he did not make a move, he would definitely be ridiculed. Therefore, the young master finally made his move. It had to be said that no one who could become a young master was an ordinary person. Their strength was definitely not something that ordinary people could imagine or compare with. When they made their move, endless turbulence would faintly cause the sky and earth to change color. This was a kind of momentum. It was a kind of terrifying momentum that could cause the sky and earth to change with a single move. Without a doubt, this was something that ordinary perfect stage martialists could not achieve. Only those who had walked extremely far on the path of martial arts could achieve this level of strength. Lu Feng's expression did not change. However, there was a look of approval in his eyes. He could feel that this strike already carried a kind of supreme power. Although it was far from the category of supreme power, this kind of power was already very good for a genius who was not at the peak. This time, Lu Feng still waved his arm gently. In an instant, all the killing intent was annihilated. This scene was once again horrifying. However, a moment later there was a kind of doubt. After annihilating that power, Lu Feng did not make any killing intent. He just stood there quietly. His opponent, the powerful young master of the aristocratic family, was also standing there in a daze. This was because he realized that he had not been completely suppressed. He had analyzed Lu Feng's previous matches, so he knew some of Lu Feng's habit. He understood that no matter what opponent Lu Feng faced, he would always obliterate them with a single strike. This time, he was confident that he was strong. However, he should not have let Lu Feng be helpless against him. In addition, whether it was Qi Liang or Wan Yueming, they had used their strongest methods to suppress their opponents. As in existence on the same level as them, Lu Feng should not have done this. After all, if he failed, it would prove that he was inferior to the two of them. Without a doubt, this was something that no monstrous genius could accept. Doubt, endless doubt. At this moment, it was not only the young master of the aristocratic family who was puzzled. Countless existences present were also endlessly puzzled. They really did not understand. Silence. Once again, it was endless silence. Everyone watched in a daze. They did not know why such a scene had happened. An emperor is an emperor. Looking at the silent Lu Feng, they laughed. The desolate emperor laughed. Wan Yueming laughed. Qi Liang also laughed. Although I don't know why he held back, an emperor is really the only emperor. He simply does not care about what others think. In his eyes, he has never placed anyone in his heart. Perhaps, he has never placed us on the same level as him. Bitter laughter, it was completely bitter laughter. The three monstrous geniuses had all treated Lu Feng as their opponent. They always hoped that they were not inferior to Lu Feng. Since Lu Feng had suppressed his opponent with one strike, they had to do the same thing to prove that they were not inferior. However, after they had suppressed their opponent with one strike, Lu Feng did not do anything. It was as if he did not care about his reputation being damaged. This could only mean one thing. Lu Feng did not care about their existence at all. Although I am very unwilling to admit it, although it is very embarrassing, I have to say that compared to an emperor, we are really inferior. It's not just his aptitude. I'm afraid his temperament is also lacking. In terms of aptitude, they were definitely not comparable to Lu Feng. In terms of temperament, it was the same. They knew that when faced with such a situation, it was impossible for them to hold back. After a monstrous genius had killed his opponent with one strike, they had to make a strong move and do the same thing. Only in this way could they show that they were not inferior to their opponent. However, Lu Feng did not care at all. He only cared about himself. This was the difference in spirit. You want to defeat me with this kind of strength? It is still a little lacking. You continue to attack. Lu Feng did not care about the gazes of the people around him. There was only a kind of calmness and a slight excitement in his expression. At this moment, he was waiting quietly. He was waiting for his opponent to erupt even more crazily. He was waiting for him to use a technique that would truly move him. Time after time, the young master of the aristocratic family had already entered a state of insanity. He had entered an endless berserk state. Any trump card was no longer a trump card. At this moment, he was no longer fighting for victory. He was fighting for his own dignity, for his own glory. These were all the most powerful attacks. The young master had poured all his supreme power into them. He had used too much, and even supreme techniques had appeared continuously. However, these powers were nothing to Lu Feng. They could not cause him any harm at all. What Lu Feng had to do was wave his arms continuously. No matter how terrifying his opponent's attacks were, no matter how intense the fluctuations were, when they reached Lu Feng's side and passed through Lu Feng's arms, they were all annihilated. Although Lu Feng did not completely defeat his opponent with one strike, this scene made everyone know that he did not do so because he was not strong enough. He just did not want to. These people did not know why Lu Feng was doing this. However, they had really seen Lu Feng's strength. This kind of strength could completely crush his peers. This kind of confidence, this kind of completely relaxed appearance really made people think of the word God. Perhaps the current Lu Feng was the true definition of a god. Finally, when the last attack was over, his opponent, the young master of the aristocratic family, no longer had any extra strength to stop the next attack. He had already fallen on the stage. He had failed. He had completely failed. No amount of killing could cause even the slightest injury to his opponent. This scene was undoubtedly very ironic. However, the audience of more than 3 billion people present did not show the slightest trace of mockery. This was because they knew that this young master was not weak. It was not that he did not work hard. It was just that his opponent was a god, an emperor. The gap between them was really too big. At the final moment, when the referee announced the end of the match, there was a round of applause below the stage. These people were sincerely moved. This kind of perseverance was the true spirit of a martial artist. Chapter 6:16. Lu Feng walked over to the young master's side and smiled. "You are really not bad." The young master's last bit of willpower kept him awake. In the face of Lu Feng's praise, he tried his best to smile. At the moment, he had already vaguely guessed Lu Feng's identity. It was only during battle that he could feel the feeling of being in complete control of everything. It was this feeling that made him think of a taboo name. Emperor. Only the existence of an emperor could control everything so perfectly. Lu Feng, before the battle even started, he already knew the name of his opponent. Although he couldn't believe it, he had already guessed that this person was the legendary #1 monstrous genius of the human race. He was also the greatest monstrous genius of the current era, and also the greatest monstrous genius in history, Emperor Lu Feng. Are you an emperor? He used the last of his strength to ask. When he heard this, Lu Feng didn't hide anything. This time, he smiled and nodded his head gently. When he saw Lu Feng's actions, the young master fainted. However, the moment he fainted, a hint of pride appeared on his face. He was not bad. The current Emperor Lu Feng had praised him? Not bad. The older generation, or the more powerful existences, couldn't understand the feelings of the younger generation. In the hearts of the younger generation, the Divine King was too far away. Plus, they only revered the Divine King because of his strength. They didn't worship him. But with regards to Lu Feng, all of the younger generation had a kind of true idolization. Emperor Lu Feng, the #1 genius of the current era, the pinnacle of the human race. In the hearts of the younger generation, Emperor Lu Feng's existence was above the Divine King's. If he could receive the Emperor's praise and make the Emperor say that he was not bad, then he could be proud of his failure. The last person to take the stage was the desolate Emperor. As the #1 seed in the eyes of the powerhouses, the desolate Emperor didn't give his opponent any chance to struggle. In an instant, he had completely suppressed his opponent with a single blow. The audience was already used to everything, so they were not surprised by what happened this time. Everyone already understood, they already knew. The grand tournament of academies this time was not the same as before. The 4 people who appeared this time were too heaven-defying and monstrous. Their strength had far exceeded the limits of the past. They had reached or even surpassed the realm and strength of the 7 sovereigns of the younger generation. Without a doubt, it was impossible for such an intense collision to occur before the battle between the 4 peak monsters. The #1 seed this time should be the one called Desolate Emperor. Wang Yueming and Qi Liang are tied, so Lu Feng should be #2. If he's not a psychic, then I'm afraid all of them are tied for the #1 seed. However, the one that I think the most highly of is still the Desolate Emperor. His cultivation realm seems to have far surpassed the others. Moreover, his killing power is truly terrifying. Every time he attacks, it causes one's heart to palpitate. I believe that this time, he will definitely be the final champion. Many people had already begun to discuss it. The top 8 had been decided in the morning. Usually, this would be very unbelievable. In the past, there were only 8 matches. Even the fastest match would take 1 day. But this time, it was so fast that it was both out of their expectations and within their expectations. After all, the strength of a few of them was simply too terrifying. Anyone who walked out would definitely be an unparalleled existence. In the entire human federation, or even in the entire space-time, there was almost no one who could compare with them. Their opponents were not on the same level as them at all. Therefore, it was reasonable for the battles to be fast. After this round of battles, the seated contestants in everyone's hearts had been rearranged. The Desolate Emperor became the first seed, while Qi Liang and Wang Yueming were tied for second. Lu Feng became the 4th seed. As for the young master of the Beigong Nanming family, who had been favored by many, he was ranked 5th and 6th. This arrangement was different from what many higher-ups had expected. Many people were slowly waiting for the shocking showdown in the afternoon to appear. However, when the afternoon arrived, a difficult problem appeared in front of everyone. Due to the previous intense clashes, a young master who had entered the top 8 was no longer able to continue fighting. Due to his serious injuries, he might not be able to recover in the next few months. Therefore, the top 8 had become 7 people. With so many people, it was really difficult to divide them. Originally, according to the normal order, one person would be given a bye. However, those who were able to enter the top 8 were the true geniuses and demons. They were destined not to be given a bye. After all, this was a kind of humiliation to them. Therefore, a difficult problem had arisen. The higher-ups of the academies were having an intense discussion in the stands. Although they all hoped that their academies would be given a bye, the people who had entered the top 8 were all young masters. They were not people they could control. Therefore, these people were worried. Lu Feng's group of 7 stood quietly at the edge of the arena, waiting for the final result. Beigong Tianxi looked at Lu Feng and said with a smile, "Young Master Lu is still so calm." There was no doubt that the 7 people who were gathered here were the most terrifying of the younger generation. Their strength was far from what anyone could compare to. Among them, Lu Feng's group of 4 were fully deserving of the title of Young Supremes among the younger generation of the universe. Upon hearing Beigong Tianxi's words, Lu Feng smiled faintly. However, his gaze was fixed on the desolate emperor and Wan Yueming. "Calm down. Actually, that's not the case. Right now, I'm really looking forward to having a good fight." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, the others looked at Lu Feng with strange emotions in their eyes. Finally, Wan Yueming looked at Lu Feng and spoke. "I never thought that there would be someone among us who could make Emperor Lu Feng want to fight. I wonder who he is?" Although his tone was calm, there was a faint excitement in his eyes. At this moment, Lu Feng's identity was no longer a secret. In addition to these 6 people, the only young master of the aristocratic family also knew about Lu Feng's identity. Although he was extremely shocked when he thought about the top geniuses of the human race gathered here, he relaxed a little. Although he knew that he was destined to be a foil, being able to be a foil to these geniuses was not a disgrace to his identity. Wan Yueming's words caused everyone to focus their gazes on him once again. It wasn't just Wan Yueming. Even the desolate emperor and Qi Liang were the same. Everyone was looking at Lu Feng because they hoped that the person that Lu Feng mentioned would be their name. An existence that the emperor of the current era longed to fight was in itself a supreme honor. In the hearts of the younger generation, Lu Feng was like a supreme existence. If he admitted that he wanted to fight, his reputation would definitely spread across the galaxy in an instant. After all, in the current era, those who had truly fought against Lu Feng were the top existences of an era or even countless eras. Those existences were so strong that even the desolate emperor couldn't compare to them. At this moment, as long as Lu Feng said a name, the owner of that name, regardless of his realm or aptitude, would instantly have his status elevated countless times. He could even be mentioned in the same breath as the crown prince of the heavenly Tao and Feather Yu. Lu Feng could feel the slightly nervous expressions of the people around him. However, it was a pity that he only smiled gently and glanced back and forth. In the end, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "This young master is at the peak of the perfect stage and a genius of the Federation. His realm is the same as mine, but your strength is still lacking by quite a bit." Although Lu Feng's evaluation of the young master was unpleasant, no one could refute it. After all, Lu Feng had even suppressed the Demon King, the master of the 6th Tao, who was one realm higher than him. In the same realm, it was publicly acknowledged in the universe that no one could go against Lu Feng. This was the truth. That young master really couldn't go against Lu Feng. Lu Feng looked at Beigong Tianxi and Nanming Shang. The 2 young masters are top geniuses. Your strength is also at the peak of the perfect stage. However, you are still a little lacking. The land of the Yellow Springs, the place where bones are buried. These 2 supreme killing techniques are still considered the pinnacle of their existence. It's a pity that you are unable to unleash the essence of these techniques. Therefore, you are still lacking. Although Beigong Tianxi and Lu Feng were together, Lu Feng still made such an evaluation. However, these words didn't anger Beigong Tianxi, as he knew that Lu Feng was evaluating them from the most objective point of view. Lu Feng looked at Qi Liang and smiled faintly. Qi Liang, right? I really didn't expect that a heaven-defying monster like you could be born among the commoners. I can feel the fluctuations of a supreme power in your body. This seems to be a supreme power that is almost at the peak. Coupled with your strength at the peak of the perfect stage, no one in the same realm as you can suppress you unless they are a supreme monarch. Qi Liang's existence wasn't as simple as a quasi-pinnacle supreme power. This was because Lu Feng sensed a terrifying fluctuation from Qi Liang's body. It was a bloodthirsty ferociousness. This was a feeling that was left behind after experiencing countless killings. Qi Liang, who had experienced countless life and death situations and killings, was definitely more powerful than what Luo Yunyang was displaying now. Therefore, in Lu Feng's opinion, although Qi Liang might not be at the peak of the Kings of Massacre, no one in the same realm as him could suppress him except for the supreme monarch of this era. No one could refute Lu Feng's evaluation. They were all convinced. This was because they knew that Lu Feng was speaking the truth. His words were even more convincing than the comments of the elders. At this moment, the few of them looked at Wan Yueming and the desolate emperor. After all, the previous 4 people had been evaluated by Lu Feng one by one. It was obvious that they didn't have the ability to fight against Lu Feng. In that case, Lu Feng's so-called battle intent wasn't for them. Everything could only be left with these 2 people. The desolate emperor and Wan Yueming were both true kings of Massacre. They were both second-level demigod. If Lu Feng wasn't the taboo king, if Lu Feng didn't have 5 supreme powers, he wouldn't even be a match for the 2 of them in terms of level. After all, in terms of realm and strength, the 2 of them could crush the peak of the perfect stage of this era. The desolate emperor smiled faintly when he saw Lu Feng's expression. He didn't say much. In his opinion, if Lu Feng really wanted to find an opponent, it could only be him. After all, only he could fight against the current Lu Feng. Moreover, the desolate emperor was confident that he wouldn't be any weaker than the current Lu Feng. As expected, Lu Feng's gaze finally landed on Wan Yueming. Wan Yueming, the young master of the Wan Yueming family. Like the desolate emperor, you're also a hidden genius. Previously, you should be the king of Massacre. You should only be a 5th-level emperor realm genius. You must have gone through some shocking opportunity to comprehend supreme powers and step into this realm. However, although you've become the king of Massacre, your accumulation is still lacking. Even if you're a 2nd-level demigod, you're still not a match for the desolate emperor. You don't deny this, right? Wan Yueming's expression didn't change when he heard Lu Feng's words. He was still smiling. He nodded slightly. Although it was really uncomfortable to say that he wasn't a match for someone in the same realm, he had to admit that Lu Feng was speaking the truth. Moreover, Lu Feng was qualified to comment on him. In the end, Lu Feng looked at the desolate emperor. Chapter 6:17. At this moment, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They had already guessed the answer from the start. To be recognized by Lu Feng, it must be the desolate emperor. After this round of comments, the desolate emperor was the only one that Lu Feng had not mentioned yet. Everything went without saying. The desolate emperor, right? The desolate emperor nodded his head gently. There was a strange look in his eyes. Ever since he was born, he had been secretly nurtured by his family. He had supreme aptitude, terrifying resources, and shocking combat power. Even the Almighties in his family had to look at him with a special expression and attitude. But now, he was being evaluated by someone who was much lower than him in terms of cultivation level and age. This strange feeling made him very uncomfortable. However, the desolate emperor had to admit that he was destined to look up to Lu Feng in the future. Therefore, he was unable to say anything. Lu Feng looked at the desolate emperor and smiled. It was a smile from the bottom of his heart. The successor of the primordial divine king family. You have the primordial divine king's peerless killing technique, the great desolation lawlessness. Your aptitude is terrifying, and you have stepped into the realm of a second-level demigod. With your strength, you should be able to go against or even suppress the feather spirit glory. The supreme power that you have comprehended should be the supreme power that the primordial divine king had comprehended before, the great desolation power. Indeed, with the supreme power of the pinnacle, the rich bloodline power, and the existence of the great desolation lawlessness, your power is comparable to that of a supreme youth among the younger generation of the universe. You are not much weaker than the young overlords. You are indeed shocking and terrifying. After hearing Lu Feng's comments, everyone looked at the desolate emperor strangely. In the past, although Qi Liang and Wan Yueming knew that the desolate emperor was stronger than them, they did not take him seriously. This was because their goals were never to be on the same level as them. The people they wanted, competed with, and chased were all at least supreme monstrous geniuses. They were all supreme kings, and even taboo kings like Lu Feng. However, after hearing Lu Feng's words, they realized that the desolate emperor had walked so far on this path. They needed to look up to him now. Compared to the desolate emperor, they were truly lacking. They were far, far lacking. The desolate emperor laughed lightly. He was feeling proud. Emperor Lu Feng, let's fight. If it wasn't for the request of one of my teachers, I wouldn't have come here. As far as I'm concerned, the pinnacle competition is meaningless. But I didn't expect to see you, the #1 monstrous genius emperor of the human race, and even the endless universe, Lu Feng. I know that I will not be a match for you in the future. I will not be able to fight against you. However, you are only at the perfect peak now. I'm 2 levels higher than you, and I've even deified my physical body and soul. The difference in talent between us can already be made up for in terms of cultivation base. Therefore, let's fight. When we are evenly matched, let's fight to our heart's content. Let me have no regrets in this life. Although his aura did not rise and no terrifying power was born, the desolate emperor had already entered a state of supreme willpower. This was the battle willpower. In the past, Lu Feng had been valued by the Federal University because he had displayed the battle willpower. He had even been accepted as a special student. The battle willpower was exclusive to monstrous geniuses. Only monstrous geniuses could enter this terrifying state of battle at any time. The desolate emperor had already started to stir. In his opinion, the so-called pinnacle competition was nothing. He wanted to fight Lu Feng, even if it meant that the rules had to be changed. Unfortunately, in the face of his willpower, Lu Feng shook his head slightly. He looked at the desolate emperor and asked, "Desolate emperor, how do you compare to the master of the 6 paths?" The desolate emperor was slightly stunned. He looked at Lu Feng for a long time and said slowly, "The master of the 6 paths, who is a first-stage demigod, is a true overlord of the younger generation. He is 1 level stronger than the previous overlords. He is a first-stage demigod. I, who is only a second-stage demigod, should not be a match for him. Unless I become a third-stage demigod, I will not be able to fight against him." After saying this, the desolate emperor looked at Lu Feng strangely. The others did the same. They had already understood something from Lu Feng's words. But after they understood, they were confused again. They did not know who Lu Feng was going to fight or how Lu Feng was going to fight. Lu Feng chuckled softly as he looked at the dumbfounded expressions on their faces. "Desolate Emperor, you are currently unable to fight against the Master of the 6 Paths, who used to fight against me. The Master of the 6 Paths is still suppressed by me. Can you fight me to your heart's content?" Silence, endless silence. That's right. They had only calculated that the desolate emperor might be able to fight Lu Feng to his heart's content. However, those were, in the end, the thoughts of those people. They were all part of their calculations. Would the real situation be like this? Would the desolate emperor really be able to fight Lu Feng? No, really, it couldn't be. These people looked at Lu Feng. They knew that Lu Feng was not saying all this to discourage them. There had to be a deeper meaning behind his words. Lu Feng's smile was still on his face as he swept his gaze across the crowd. However, this time, everyone could vaguely feel a kind of domineering aura, a kind of terrifying will rising. Finally, after looking around, Lu Feng's voice slowly sounded. This time I really feel a kind of fighting intent. I am not just saying it casually. It is true. It's a pity that my battle intent did not appear for any of you. Hearing this, the crowd seemed to have vaguely sensed something. A strange expression appeared on their faces, a kind of slight shock. They seemed to have thought of something. In the next moment Lu Feng laughed. He did not hide his laughter at all. Even many of the spectators outside heard it clearly. On the spectators' stand, the higher-ups who were discussing the method looked at Lu Feng at the same time. There was a slight displeasure in their eyes. However, they did not say anything. Although they did not know Lu Feng's identity, just Lu Feng's performance alone was enough to shock the world. They did not want to, were not willing to, and did not dare to offend Lu Feng. Just like that, Lu Feng attracted everyone's attention in an instant. However, he was oblivious to it and was still laughing heartily. Finally, as if he was tired of laughing, Lu Feng's voice slowly disappeared. At this moment, he looked at the 6 geniuses and monstrous existences and said, I want to fight. I want to fight with all of you. I am right here. I challenge all of you. I challenge all of you. In an instant, everyone held their breaths as they looked at Lu Feng in disbelief, then at the side of the arena. Many of them opened their mouths, but they had already forgotten what they wanted to say. At this moment, they were all stunned, shocked, and confused. One person challenging all of the top 8? Was this a joke? Was this arrogance? Was this an idiot? Yes, yes. In everyone's heart, Lu Feng's performance was a joke. He was an idiot. He was an arrogant and ignorant person. He really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, no one laughed and no one opened their mouth. That was because they discovered that the main characters of this matter, the other 6 people who were supposed to be mocking and shouting angrily, were all silent. They were actually completely silent. Many people seemed to have understood something. Their eyes were filled with shock and bewilderment. Such an attitude made them vaguely understand something. At this moment, even the higher-ups of the university were shocked. They looked at each other and finally looked at Vice President Huang of the Federal University. At this moment, Vice Headmaster Huang was also at a loss. He knew Lu Feng's identity and knew how terrifying Lu Feng was. However, in his heart, Lu Feng was so strong that even Huang Di would have to take him seriously. However, at this moment, he actually wanted to challenge the 6 geniuses and monsters. This was simply indescribable. Vice President Huang, isn't this student of yours a little too presumptuous? Vice President Rong's face was filled with gloominess. He was the current vice president of the capital university, a godlike existence. In his territory there was someone who was so arrogant. This was simply not putting him in his eyes. How could Vice President Rong be at ease? How could he tolerate this? Vice President Huang quickly came to his senses. At this moment, no matter how dissatisfied he was with Lu Feng, he would not say anything. At this moment, the Federal University and Lu Feng were one body. It was impossible for him to drag Lu Feng down at this moment. Looking at Vice President Rong, Vice President Huang smiled gently and said, "Isn't this the best outcome? We discussed for so long before but still did not come to any conclusion. However, this is the best outcome. Since he wants to fight, then let him fight. Regardless of whether he wins or loses, the Federal University will accept it." Vice President Huang, who had thought everything through, chose to believe in Lu Feng at this moment. He believed that the Emperor could create a miracle. Vice President Rong's eyes were gloomy. At this moment, they were filled with endless anger. As a godlike existence, it was very difficult to make him angry. However, at this moment, he was really angry. The anger in his heart was indescribable. Vice President Rong actually smiled at Vice President Huang. It was an extremely gloomy smile. The Federal University is really too much. This time, the location of the battle was the capital university. If they really allowed Lu Feng to fight like this, then no matter what, he would create a legend. As the place where such a legend appeared, the capital university would become a joke. After all, Lu Feng was completely breaking the rules at this moment. The capital university actually had no ability to stop him. Therefore, even if they won, they would still lose face. Therefore, he could not allow this. Chapter 6:18. After taking one last look at Vice Principal Huang, Principal Rong finally left the place. His figure completely disappeared from the spectator's stand. In the next moment, he appeared in the arena. Everyone recognized Principal Rong's existence. He was one of the top powerhouses of the human race on the surface. Coupled with his identity as the principal of Capital University, it could be said that all the 3 billion people who had come to watch the competition knew him. When they saw Principal Rong appear, these people had strange looks in their eyes. They knew that this true God principal could no longer bear to see this and was about to set the rules. He stood quietly in the void, at the top of the endless arena. The majesty of a god was completely released at this moment. This was not a terrifying aura, but a kind of spiritual suppression. This was the majesty of a god. At this moment, when everyone saw Principal Rong, they already had a look of reverence. The true God Principal Rong looked at Lu Feng and smiled. However, this smile no longer had the kindness of the past. From his smile, everyone could sense only one emotion. This emotion was called the wrath of a god. God was furious. This time, the competition will be held in the Capital University. As the principal of Capital University, I, Rong Yuanyu, will not allow anyone to break the rules. If you want to set your own rules, then you have to be strong enough. I don't care who you are, I don't care who is behind you. Unless you can defeat me and become the strongest person here, you have to listen to my arrangements. The will of a god is not to be violated. When the voice rang out, it reverberated throughout the world, causing everyone to fall silent, tremble, and panic. The Desolation Emperor was silent as he looked at Lu Feng quietly. Wan Yueming was silent as he looked at Lu Feng indifferently. Qi Liang pondered as he looked at Lu Feng in a carefree manner. At this moment, everyone was looking at Lu Feng, who seemed to want to set his own rules and create his own rules. Principal Wang, Vice Principal Huang, the principals of the various colleges, the audience of 3 billion people, and all the students participating in the competition were watching Lu Feng. They were all waiting for Lu Feng's reaction. Feeling so many gazes, Lu Feng chose to remain silent. Everyone thought that he was finally going to retreat. This was the majesty of a god, the will of a god. These were the words of a true deity. This was a supreme law decree. No one could go against it. Otherwise, they would suffer the wrath and punishment of God. Principal Rong looked at Lu Feng. He was also waiting. At this moment, he was incomparably cold. In his opinion, with his status as a true god and his status as the principal of the Capital University, Lu Feng should be courteous, trembling, and changing his opinion. However, he remained silent. This proved that Lu Feng didn't disagree with what he had said. He was still resisting, silently resisting. This situation did not last for long. Because in the next moment, Lu Feng smiled. His smile was so big and pure, yet so complicated. His laughter was very soft, but it slowly became louder. In an instant, in this incomparably quiet environment, it was so ear-piercing that no one could ignore it. Looking at Principal Rong, Lu Feng's laughter gradually stopped. His eyes were filled with a kind of light. It was a kind of light that no one could look directly at. Finally, Lu Feng's voice sounded. Is the majesty of a true God that important? Is the will of a true God that intolerable? Lu Feng's words resounded in everyone's ears. They were unable to describe the shock in their hearts at this moment. This was a challenge to the majesty of a God. This was blasphemy. Although the combat strength of the desolate emperor and the others was not inferior to that of a god, they absolutely did not dare to provoke a true god in front of so many people. After all, a true god was a terrifying expert that they absolutely could not fight against. Although the desolate emperor could defeat a peak god now, he had no way to deal with a true god. A true god was in existence on a completely different level. Although the difference between the two was like heaven and earth, the desolate emperor did not have any resistance in the face of a true god. Hearing Lu Feng's words, Principal Rong did not speak. He only looked at Lu Feng as if he was waiting for Lu Feng to continue speaking. However, anyone could see the coldness in Principal Rong's eyes, that kind of terrifying killing intent. As a true god, as the president of the capital university, and as the most powerful human known to the public, how could his dignity be challenged and trampled on like this? He did not speak, not because he was not angry. It was because his anger had already made it difficult for him to speak easily. Lu Feng was still quietly looking at Principal Rong. At this moment, there was no existence in his eyes. In his eyes, there was only Principal Rong. In the past, when I was only a peak evolution stage martial artist, I dared to fight the perfect stage crown prince of the heavenly Tao for my cousin. Therefore, I started the Battle of the Kings. In the past, I turned into Futu and fought in the void. I killed hundreds of peerless geniuses of the foreign races and suppressed an existence of an era. In the past, I challenged the king of Taboo, the Demon King. I suppressed the Demon King's clone with my strength that was one realm lower. In the past, I suppressed Yu and crossed the river of time and space to fight the supreme immortal lord of the immortal devil era, the master of six Tao. What was I afraid of? What did I care about? I am Lu Feng, I am the Emperor Lu Feng. In my era, I am the greatest existence. Lu Feng's voice resounded throughout the place. It seemed to have become a kind of eternal melody, a kind of supreme Sanskrit that stirred people's hearts. Emperor Lu Feng. He was actually called Emperor Lu Feng. A young existence, at most, would be called a conferred emperor, at most, it would be a young emperor. However, this young man was actually a conferred emperor. What kind of terrifying and domineering title was this? What kind of title was this? What kind of title was this? No matter if it was a title he gave himself or publicly acknowledged, to be able to be a conferred emperor, this was a kind of invincible performance, a kind of terrifying performance of invincible spirit. At this moment, there was no longer any debate about who was a conferred emperor. No one denied it anymore. Everyone's heart had already made the same decision. Lu Feng, Emperor Lu Feng. This was the real number one seed. Moreover, the words he said were so unbelievable that it was hard to describe the agitation in their hearts. Emperor Lu Feng, his deeds, are they all true? Why have I never heard of them? Any one of these things is a shocking feat that might not appear in an era. They are all miracles. But why haven't I heard of any of them? I don't know anything about them. Why? Why? Some of the noble existences roared slightly. They believed that they were the top figures in the Federation. They knew a lot of the Federation's top secret. However, why didn't they know anything about Lu Feng? These people understood that since Lu Feng dared to make such a loud and crazy announcement here, then what he said must be true. Since it was true, then why hadn't they heard of it? Why? These university principals looked at each other. Even Principal Rong's eyes flashed with endless turbulence at this moment. They were different from those noble figures on the surface. How could they not know about Emperor Lu Feng? From the moment Lu Feng opened his mouth and announced the start of the Battle of the Kings, they already knew about it. They already knew about Lu Feng's identity. Emperor Lu Feng, the young master of the Lu family, the first person in the Battle of the Kings, the first person in the history of the Battle of the Kings, the first person in the Battle of the Kings since ancient times, the most heaven-defying monster in the universe, and the most likely existence to surpass the primogenitor human king. Everything, including this extremely luxurious glory, was prepared for Lu Feng. It was all used to describe Emperor Lu Feng. How could they not know? How could they not know? No one would have thought that the number one person of the universe's younger generation, an existence whose status was even more honorable than the godly kings, would actually come to participate in such a grand competition, such an insignificant grand competition of the apex academies. This had already thrown everyone into disarray. At this moment, Principal Rong was really at a loss. He was speechless. He had previously said that no matter who stood behind Lu Feng or what kind of background he had, they would have to listen to him here. However, when Lu Feng had revealed his identity, he had felt that everything was a joke. It was really a complete joke. Who would dare to say that this was their place in front of the emperor? Vaguely, they all thought of Lu Feng's last words. In my era, I am the greatest existence. He was Emperor Lu Feng. In the era of the emperor, all existences were the emperor's subjects. They had to submit to the emperor. His previous words were a joke, a complete joke. Lu Feng looked at everything around him. At this moment, his fighting spirit was high. My existence suppresses everything. I've never admitted my failure. I've never thought that I'm weaker than anyone else. Even if I am not now, given time, I will still surpass everyone. I will still be able to surpass everyone, even if it is my ancestor, the human king. Lu Feng's words once again caused a shocking sensation among the ordinary people. At this moment, everyone finally knew Lu Feng's identity. My ancestor, the human king. This already explained everything. This already explained Lu Feng's identity. His surname was Lu. He was actually from the number one aristocratic family in the world, the source of the human race's faith, the human king Lu family. Such a heaven-defying existence had to be the young master of an aristocratic family. He was actually the current young master of a human king aristocratic family. He was actually an existence akin to the number one prince of the human race in the world. The atmosphere at the scene had already reached a peak. An indescribable berserk atmosphere had already appeared. No one had expected that such a noble existence would actually descend here. In their eyes, this was a completely legendary existence. Shock, madness, and boiling. Countless people were roaring, unable to suppress the excitement in their hearts. Seeing this scene, Rong Yuanyu took a deep breath. At this moment, a strange look flashed across his eyes. A trace of determination flashed across his eyes. Chapter 6:19. The majesty of a god appeared once again, shocking the world and suppressing all the clamor. Everyone instinctively shut their mouths and stared blankly at what was happening before their eyes. Rong Yuanyu looked at Lu Feng and made a decision in his heart. Capital University was their painstaking effort. It was the university that his teacher and his teacher's teacher had accumulated. It carried their hopes and dreams. He couldn't watch Lu Feng break the rules of Capital University. He couldn't watch the glory of Capital University get trampled on like this. In his heart, the Capital University's strength was where his faith and hope lay. Therefore, at this moment, he was willing to let go of everything for the sake of his faith. Young Master Lu, I know that you have a distinguished status. I may have been exaggerating, but I hope you can understand that this is Capital University. In Capital University we are the masters. You are Emperor Lu Feng. That's right. There is no mistake about that. However, you are still an emperor of the younger generation after all. You are still very, very far away from being the supreme emperor of this universe and becoming the greatest emperor of all time and space in the universe. Therefore, this time, no matter what, you have to abide by my rules. I've said it before. No matter what kind of power or background you have, in this capital university, you have to abide by my rules. I have already said this before, so I will say it again. Here, I am a true god. You have to abide by my rules. The cold glint in his eyes became even more obvious. The majesty of a true god was completely released at this moment. It whistled towards Lu Feng, as if it wanted to annihilate Lu Feng completely. Many people took a deep breath when they saw Principal Rong's actions. They knew that Principal Rong wanted to fight to the death with Lu Feng. He didn't intend to give in. He wanted to fight to the death with the human king and the Lu family. At this moment, the atmosphere returned to its previous tranquil state. Everyone was silent. They were completely silent. This kind of oppressive atmosphere made them unable to speak. It was difficult for them to say a single word. They looked quietly at Lu Feng and Principal Rong. Everyone was waiting for the final outcome. Once again, Lu Feng smiled. He looked at Principal Rong and didn't seem to care about his previous words. Lu Feng's smile disappeared as a solemn look appeared on his face. At this moment, he was so serious that it was indescribable. Principal Rong, I am an emperor. My glory has never been obtained with the help of my family. I, Lu Feng, have always relied on myself to walk step by step to become a supreme existence among the younger generation. I don't need anyone's help. In the past, I clashed with all my opponents. In the past, I broke through countless obstacles. In the past, I faced countless terrifying attacks. In the past, I walked out of the abyss of slaughter. I, Lu Feng, have never relied on anyone. Lu Feng's words resounded through everything. His confidence, his pride, no one could imagine. These young masters of aristocratic families, including Wasteland Emperor Yu and Yu Ronghua, Sky Dao Crown Prince Wang Qingyun, and the 31st Prince of the Serene blood race, had all relied on their family's power to reach this step. However, he, Lu Feng, had relied on his own strength to reach where he was today. He had never relied on anyone. His pride couldn't be erased by anyone. You said that you were the strongest person here, so you could make all the rules. Indeed, in this world and universe, strength is respected. Only the strongest and most eternal strength can suppress everything. You can make the rules because you are the strongest person here. However, if you are no longer the strongest person here, then what right do you have to make all the rules? My rules are made by me. Your rules are made by you. In that case, whose rules belong to whom will depend on whose strength is stronger. Between you and me, let's have a battle. Using our rules as the wager, let's see who is the strongest existence here. Bewilderment, silence, shock, dumbfoundedness, all kinds of speechless emotions appeared slowly and suddenly, causing everyone to be confused. Their hearts were empty and in turmoil. Everyone looked at Lu Feng, unable to believe what they had just heard. After a long time, someone finally asked the person next to him slowly, "Did he just say that he wanted to challenge someone? Who?" The person next to him was at a loss. He said in a daze. He said that he might be the one who said that. If he's right, then the one he wants to challenge is Principal Rong, Rong Yuanyu of Capital University. He's a true god. He wanted to challenge a true god? As an existence of the younger generation, as an existence who was not even a demigod, he actually wanted to challenge a true god. In the past, the ancestor of the Lu family, the great human king, ignited the divine flame at the age of 17. At 18, he broke the sky with one hand and killed an ancient true god of the foreign race. At that time, although the human king had already become a true god, his opponent, the ancient true god of the foreign race, was a truly heaven-defying true god. He himself was the king of massacre. It can be said that the human king killed the king of massacre despite the difference of one realm. The true god that he became was terrifying. And now, his descendant, the emperor who claimed to surpass him, actually wants to accomplish such a shocking feat? If he succeeds, then perhaps he already has the qualifications to be on par with the human king, or even surpass the greatest divine king, the human king. In the past, when the human king was at the demigod realm, he had once suppressed a true god expert. Lu Feng was now at the peak of the perfect realm, but he wanted to face a true god directly. If he succeeded, then he would create a sacred site of his own. It would be comparable to or even surpass the human king's sacred site. Speechless, silent, turbulent, and then clamorous, boiling, shocking. The scene was already filled with an indescribably terrifying clamor. At that moment, Rong Yuanyu, who was standing at the peak of the void, had a complicated expression on his face. He had already seen through it. He had already understood. He had finally figured out what Lu Feng's complicated expression meant. He had already understood why Lu Feng had done all this. He looked at Lu Feng with an indescribable bitterness at the corner of his mouth. At that moment, Rong Yuanyu's voice resounded throughout the world. "Young Master Lu, what a good scheme. Really, what a good scheme. I think that from the very beginning, your goal wasn't the 6 of them. You've never put the 6 of them in your eyes, right? Actually, the one you want to challenge and clash with is me. You have done so much, said so much, stirred up the emotions of so many people, and created such an atmosphere. The fundamental reason you have done so much is not to become the champion of the pinnacle grand competition, nor to challenge the 6 pinnacle geniuses and monstrous geniuses. You only have one goal, and that is to surpass the human king. And I am the opportunity for you to surpass the human king. This time, you have come for me." At that moment, the desolate emperor was jolted awake. He looked at Lu Feng, and the turbulence in his heart was indescribable. Vaguely, he had already understood. He had finally figured it out. He had figured it out. He had figured it out. The desolate emperor knew that Principal Rong was right. Lu Feng had done so much to cause conflict. He had done it to clash with Principal Rong, who was a true god. Yes, there was an indescribable bitterness at the corners of his mouth, as well as a kind of agitation in his heart. Wan Yueming looked at Lu Feng and said slowly, "I remember that when you were on the battlefield in the foreign regions, you transformed into Psyche Master Futu. With a wave of your hand, the sky descended and obliterated countless existences. To you, unless they were existences of the same level, no matter how many people there were, they would be completely suppressed by you in an instant. Although there were 6 of us, apart from the desolate emperor, the others would be completely defeated by you the moment they exchanged blows. Therefore, you don't want to challenge the 6 of us at all. To you, there is no difference between the 6 of us and the 1 of you. Your true goal is to become a true god, which is Principal Rong. Or perhaps your goal is the supreme sacred relic, the sacred relic that surpasses the one created by your ancestor, the human king." At that moment, they finally understood what Lu Feng was talking about. They finally understood why he was so excited about the battle. They had never been in Lu Feng's eyes. Even the desolate emperor, who had been analyzed to be able to fight Lu Feng, was no match for him. Lu Feng was only slightly interested in them, but he didn't have any vigorous battle intent. His goal was simply the true god's sacred relic. There was a speechless silence. Silence. Complete silence. Monstrous waves surged in their hearts. Their souls were shaken to the core. However, the blood of these people was surging intensely. They knew that what was about to happen next would be the greatest sacred relic in history. This would be a world-shaking sacred relic that only a human king could create in the endless epochs of the universe. Lu Feng looked at Principal Rong, who was standing at the peak of the arena. The vigorous battle intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. At that moment, he had already let go of it. His goal had already been stated. After doing so much, Lu Feng was incomparably strong at the moment. He was an emperor who ruled over an era and billions of eras. He wouldn't allow anyone to surpass him, to overshadow him. Even if this person was his ancestor, he still wouldn't allow it. Rong Yuanyu was silent. He looked at Lu Feng with a complicated expression. How could he not know about the legends of emperors? If someone else wanted to challenge him at the peak of perfection, it would be the biggest joke. However, the person who said this was Lu Feng. He was the true number one person of the universe's younger generation. He was an emperor who had the potential to surpass the human king ancestor of the past. If he said he could fight, then he could fight. Chapter 620. The will of the Master of Six Dao was so terrifying, yet it was still suppressed by him. It was completely suppressed without mercy. Now that some time has passed, although his realm hasn't increased, his strength has become stronger. He actually wants to defy the heavens and punish the world by challenging the existence of a true God. How terrifying is the emperor? Is there a limit to his future? Countless people were puzzled and fell silent. Along the way, Lu Feng had made a name for himself that shocked the world. His strength was not to be doubted. At this moment, he was about to attack a new domain. This was a grand feat that not even the mortal monarch progenitor was able to accomplish. This was the greatest feat of facing a true god at the perfect stage. Thinking of this, even the students of Capital University felt their blood boil. Although Lu Feng's fame was unparalleled, it was their federal university's reputation that needed to be trampled. But Lu Feng was the emperor of the human race. His rise, his greatness, they all belonged to the human race's unparalleled glory. Fight, fight! Fight! Fight, fight, fight! Countless voices appeared, and in the end, there was only one sentence, and that was to fight. Fight. Only fight. Even if they lost the prestige of a university, it could cast Lu Feng's invincible power. It could make the human race the greatest race in the future era. Countless shouts shook the heavens and earth, causing everyone's souls to burn and their blood to boil. At this moment, there was no other choice but to fight. Rong Yuanyu was silent. After a moment, he laughed. His laughter was so terrifying and crazy. After I became a true god, and became the president of Capital University, I have always been wise and calm. Capital University is where our blood, sweat, and tears are placed. It is our future hope. But at this moment I can't help but feel my blood boil. This battle isn't the decline of Capital University's glory, but the beginning of our name. Emperor Lu Feng, if you can surpass the first human king in history in today's battle, complete a shocking feat, and start the era of the emperor, then, my place will be the birthplace of the divine relic. How can I not fight? How can I not fight? Emperor, let's fight. Let me see where your confidence comes from, where your strength comes from. You want the divine remains, you want to surpass the number one sovereign personage since ancient times. Then give me this chance. Fight, fight, fight. Heaven and earth trembled. Heaven and earth truly trembled. At this moment, countless voices converged together, forming an unprecedentedly terrifying storm. This was the power of faith, and it was enough to change space and time and change the cycle of reincarnation. Countless people erupted in commotion, completely going crazy. In an instant, an extreme power of power was awakened in the ancient building of the Capital University. The tyrannical power was enough to sweep across the world and shake the heavens. The entire capital city was awoken by an innumerable amount of terrifying might. Countless peerless experts who surpassed all others were awakened. They were summoned by the greatest will to come here and witness the saint miracle. Outside the capital planet, dozens of ancient and desolate auras gradually awakened. The birth of these dozens of wills actually caused the entire universe's void to tremble. At this moment, even the great beings of the human race far away in the endless star system were startled awake at the same time. They all looked in the same direction, their faces full of shock. This is the appearance of the great protector of the human race. Could it be that the capital planet of the human race has been conquered by the foreign races? Why are the greatest protectors of the human race, the will of the Divine King, all awakening? What's going on? How could this be? Give me the news immediately. I want to know immediately. Countless voices reverberated as countless wills were born and awakened. They were all shocked at the same time, because at this moment they felt a shocking change in the human race. They felt the awakening of the greatest protector of the human race. The Lu family's sovereign planet. Ancient existences walked out. They were all peerless powerhouses. The one who stood at the peak was the ancestor of the Lu family, a supreme existence at the level of an alien supreme. This was the combat strength of the current Divine King, the ultimate strength of the human race. His appearance shocked all living beings, causing the entire human king planet to tremble. His eyes shone with a shocking light, as if he could see the cycle of reincarnation and reflect the dust of history. A moment later, a shocking fluctuation appeared in his eyes. There was a look of shock in his eyes. Many of the Lu family's exceptional experts were horrified. They were overwhelmed with shock. This was because for such a light to appear in the eyes of a supreme existence of the heretic path, it undoubtedly showed how terrifying this matter was. Ancestor, could it be that a peerless king of the alien race has descended on the capital planet and wants to exterminate the human race? A battle! A battle! We will protect the human race. Even if we die, we will protect the human race. The peerless powerhouses of the Lu family were boiling with excitement. As the bloodline of the Lu family and the direct bloodline of the human king, when the human race was in danger, they would stand at the forefront of the human race and sacrifice their last drop of blood to protect the human race. However, in the face of these people's excitement, the Lu family's ancestor remained silent. The shock in his eyes, however, became more and more obvious. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out, reverberating through the endless void. It was as if the entire galaxy could hear it clearly. Good. 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 Lu Feng. Good job. Invincible. Invincible. The era of the human king has passed. If you win, you will replace the human king and become the faith of the Lu family. If you can win, from now on, heaven and earth, the universe will enter a new era. I await your victory. I await the beginning of the era of Emperor Lu Feng. The blood of many peerless powerhouses was boiling. With the help of the Lu family's ancestor, they vaguely understood everything. The scene they saw shook their hearts and minds, causing them to seethe endlessly. Surpass the human king. Since ancient times, many people had shouted this slogan, but no one had ever been able to do it. Even Lu Feng, who was known to have the shocking potential to surpass the human king, could not compare to the human king's ancestor in terms of combat strength apart from his cultivation speed. But now, he was about to break through. He wanted to take the first step to surpass the human king's ancestor under the witness of countless living beings. The world trembled and boiled endlessly. In the next moment, the Lu family's ancestor disappeared. He wanted to witness the arrival of this greatest moment. At this moment, the peerless powerhouses of the entire human race woke up one after another. All kinds of wills appeared and were reflected in the capital planet. They also wanted to witness the arrival of history and the emergence of the era of emperors. This era is the era of emperors. Lu Feng, I am proud of you. Far away in an unknown spacetime, Tu Tianxian, or rather, the Divine King Tu Tianxian, suddenly woke up. His eyes were filled with shock, madness, and tears. Your era is finally about to begin. Lu Feng, Let our dreams appear on you. Let all the conspiracies be completely destroyed because of you. Lu Feng, if you are the emperor, I am willing to submit." The shocking changes in the sky continued to appear, causing those people to gradually become numb. Over at the contestants' side, disciples of aristocratic families started to kneel down and shout their greetings to their ancestors. They had already sensed the arrival of their own ancestors. They had actually all appeared. The scene was boiling. It was already out of control. The 3 billion people in the audience couldn't control themselves. They really hadn't expected that they would witness the appearance of a miracle and the birth of a great sacred relic just by watching an ordinary battle. Their emotions and their madness were completely ignited at this moment. At the moment, there were no gods or aristocratic family ancestors in their eyes. All they saw was the almighty figure who had already stepped into the void. They saw it. It was Lu Feng. Lu Feng walked around gently. Although he looked calm, his body was already trembling. He was trembling slightly, violently, and terrifyingly. His bloodline had already started to boil and reached its peak in an instant. Lu Feng didn't react in the slightest when all the attention was focused on him. Right now, he only had eyes for Rong Yuanyu, the great true god existence. In the next moment, Lu Feng slowly took a step forward, shattering the void. This was a truly invincible power, a forbidden zone belonging to gods. Lu Feng wasn't just a fake shattering. He truly had the power of a god. "Boil, my bloodline," the human monarch's shadow roared, shaking everything. The figure that rose from the ground was the legend that had once reached the end of everything, the primogenitor human monarch. Behind Lu Feng, it suppressed the void and made countless living beings want to kneel and tremble in worship. This was the primogenitor human monarch. Such power was enough to kill countless gods. Just this alone was enough to make Lu Feng the most powerful monster in the universe. Unfortunately, this was still not enough. It was far from enough. How could Lu Feng's peak be so little? He was the emperor who wanted to surpass the primogenitor human monarch. How could he rely on the human monarch to surpass the human monarch? Therefore, it wasn't over. It was far from over. In the next moment, the human monarch disappeared and was replaced by a true supreme demon. That was a demon among demons, a great demon. The color of Lu Feng's body began to transform. The noble color of a purple-gold emperor appeared, reflecting the power of the golden bloodline. It was incomparably noble and glorious. At the last moment, everything disappeared. Only a long river of time and space appeared from the endless time and space. It passed through all the ancient times and history. In the long river of time and space, a figure soared into the sky, shattering everything. Billions of gods as the body, countless immortals and demons as the bones, the truth of time and space as the eyes, eternal fate as the soul. The greatest shadow, the strongest phenomenon since ancient times, the incarnation of the great emperor was born. The photo that reached the sky flashed. It was still unknown and hazy, connecting the beginning and end, passing through history and era. Countless immortals and demons surrounded it, and countless great divine beasts, saint beasts, and immortal beasts were ferocious. Everything set off the peerless great emperor, set off Lu Feng's incomparable nobility. Looking at Lu Feng's transformation, Rong Yuanyu's heart trembled. It was endless shock. Such a magnificent transformation, such a noble birth, these were all unprecedented. They were all matchless and invincible. He finally understood why Lu Feng wanted to challenge him. Why did he have the confidence to challenge him when he was still at the perfect peak stage, crossing the two huge levels of demigod and deity to challenge him? It turned out that he could really do it. He really had such shocking combat strength. The desolate emperor was silent. Wan Yueming was silent. Qi Liang was silent. The silence at this moment was a silence of sorrow, self-mockery, and shock. Previously, he had calculated countless times that he could fight Lu Feng. He calculated that his current combat strength shouldn't be much weaker than Lu Feng's. However, the scene in front of them had completely smacked their faces. It made them understand that the gap between them and Lu Feng was like a natural chasm. Emperor Lu Feng. Chapter 621. This was Emperor Lu Feng. This was the fundamental reason why he had become Emperor Lu Feng. Standing quietly in the void, Lu Feng felt an invincible will overlooking everything. It was a thrill of sublimation. He looked at the distant horizon. In the haze, he saw an invincible figure standing quietly for a long time. He even saw the birth of more than a dozen great figures. "Are you all watching as well?" Lu Feng smiled. However, this smile was a maniacal smile. Anyone who saw it would feel fear in their hearts. "One day I will surpass all of you. This era belongs to me, the Emperor. In my era I will be the greatest existence. My people will be the noblest race in the universe. You have protected the human race for such a long time. From the moment I set foot in that great realm, the human race will be under my protection. I will surpass everyone. I will become the greatest existence since ancient times. I will be Emperor Lu Feng." His eyes were unprecedentedly bright. What Lu Feng saw were their imprints. They were the great imprints left behind by the greatest existences of the human race. Their existence had suppressed the destiny of the human race and protected it for countless years. Lu Feng respected them, but Lu Feng wanted to surpass them. Because this was the greatest form of respect. This was the perfect reward for all that they had contributed. Looking at the noblest and most powerful figure among the dozen figures, Lu Feng's smile became even more terrifying and ferocious. However, it also became even more resolute. "My ancestor, the era of the human king belongs to you. However, the current era belongs to me. In this era, I, Emperor Lu Feng, will definitely dominate the galaxy. Dominate the galaxy. In my era, I will become the greatest existence. I will dominate everything. Even if it is the endless galaxy, I will be the only one. Arrogant and domineering." However, everyone understood that if Lu Feng really won, then he would really start a new era, an era that belonged to him. If he won, then the galaxy era would be ready to enter the era of his emperor. He had the right to say these words. He had the right to look down on all living beings. Lu Feng trembled. After seeing that Rong Yuanyu had already entered the pinnacle realm and after his martial arts incarnation had completely taken form, he had already launched the strongest and most terrifying attack. Since the start of the battle, Lu Feng had never taken the initiative to attack. But now, when everything had reached its peak, when he had stepped into the peak of glory and splendor, he finally let go. His blood, his heart, his soul, his will. His everything wanted him to fight a crazy battle. This punch utilized all 5 supreme powers. After experiencing the memory inheritance, Lu Feng's current strength was truly invincible among the divine spirits. Even if he didn't use both of his souls, he could easily kill any godly spirit realm expert. Therefore, this attack had already reached a kind of limit. Seeing this attack, the desolate emperor's face turned pale. He knew that if Lu Feng had attacked him with this shocking attack, then he would have been killed instantly. He couldn't withstand this attack at all. So I can't even withstand an attack from a pinnacle emperor. How sad, how laughable. I used to think that I could fight with him now and even suppress him. It was undoubtedly a very sad thing to not be able to clearly recognize one's own strength. And such arrogance made him feel uncomfortable. Facing this shocking attack, Rong Yuanyu didn't waver at all. Although Lu Feng's ultimate attack could easily kill any godly spirit realm expert. But he was a true god. A true god was the only true god, a true godly spirit realm expert. Their existence was acknowledged by the heavens and earth and had to be worshipped. Such a terrifying expert was far from being comparable to any ordinary godly spirit realm expert. This attack was also a shocking and terrifying attack. The void collided, dyeing the sky and shattering space and time. Rong Yuanyu's face was solemn as he looked at Lu Feng and said, "It's just that with this kind of killing, you can't defeat me and create a sacred site that belongs to you." The moment his voice landed, his face changed abruptly. Because at this moment, in the shattered collision zone, there was an even more terrifying fluctuation. This was an extreme killing that was even more terrifying than Lu Feng's previous attack. It was shocking, as if it was an existence that wanted to destroy everything. An even more terrifying killing was born. It was as if the king's footsteps were stepping between heaven and earth, bringing with them the turbulence of history. Wang Tong. This is the Heavenly King move from the Wang Tong chapter of the Scripture of the Human King. Hidden in the endless, any place where space and time exist is the source of his power, the place where his power was born. Using the Heavenly King move with the body of an emperor, it is truly terrifying. Power is unlimited. The Heavenly King move that Lu Feng used had already crossed a kind of shackle. Although it was still at the level of godly spirits, this kind of power was a power that even true gods would be terrified of. What a great scheme, what a terrifying battle will! He actually deceived everyone. That attack just now was not his main killing move at all. Everything was just a cover. An emperor, he is indeed an emperor. Everyone was shocked. The original Lu Feng was already incomparably terrifying, but the battle wisdom he displayed now made people tremble endlessly. Such a Lu Feng was obviously more terrifying than Lu Feng, who could only rely on brute force to injure his opponent. It was indescribable. After a long time, an even more terrifying annihilation came and disappeared. Rong Yuanyu returned to his previous position. He looked at Lu Feng. At this moment, all the contempt he had for him had been completely withdrawn. The collision just now had made him understand one thing, something he had to believe. Although the power and realm that Lu Feng displayed was not at the level of a true god, but for some reason, his killing move seemed to have entered a different kind of realm. It actually had the power to injure his own power. At this moment, Rong Yuanyu truly regarded Lu Feng as an opponent who also belonged to the true god realm. The two of them quietly looked at each other, attracting the attention of hundreds of millions of people. In Lu Feng's eyes, the scorching battle intent was even more vigorous. At this moment, through that peerless killing move just now, he finally confirmed one thing, and that was that his killing move really had the power of a true god of slaughter. Lu Feng knew that although he was incomparably heaven-defying in the past, wanting to fight a true god was undoubtedly impossible. But, after going through the third level of Tongtian Fudu, seeing the history of the immortal race, witnessing the confrontation between the supreme immortal masters, and witnessing the final confrontation between the supreme sovereigns, every bit of him carried a kind of inexplicable mystery. And it was this kind of existence that allowed his power to rise again, allowing him to enter this kind of level. At this moment, many of the onlooking almighties were completely silent. They could already see that the current Lu Feng really had the combat power of a true god. He could really injure or even suppress a true god. Without a doubt, this was already comparable to a human king. The current emperor was already the reincarnation of a human king. However, they understood that all this was not enough for Lu Fenglai. It was far from enough. Because Lu Feng's goal was the divine trace, to surpass the primogenitor human king. Therefore, just having this kind of combat power was not enough. He had to complete the shocking feat that not even a human king could accomplish. He had to suppress a true god at the peak of the perfect stage. It's really possible to become an emperor, although the current him only has the combat power of a true god, and there is still a little gap between him and Rong Yuanyu, Don't forget that he is the greatest trump card of an emperor. Forget that he is the strongest power of the taboo monarch. The strongest power of the taboo monarch. The voice was not concealed at all. Countless existences in the entire void heard it clearly. At this moment, they were startled awake. Yes, Lu Feng was the taboo monarch, and this was the most terrifying part of him. The most powerful part of the taboo monarch was the supreme ability. As for Lu Feng's supreme divine ability, it was the twin souls, the most terrifying supreme divine ability. The twin souls of the emperor was a universally recognized supreme ability, the most powerful and terrifying power. Lu Feng, who had activated the twin souls, was equivalent to two emperors fighting against another person. These two people had the same power, and they were the most deeply coordinated existence. In the face of two such Lu Feng, who in the world could go against them? Who would dare to go against them at the same level? When the two souls are activated, the monarch's combat strength will increase by more than 2 times. At that time, he might really succeed. Although this wasn't a battle between Wang Zhan and the human race, the significance of this battle was even more shocking than the battle between Wang Zhan and the human race. This was because this was a sign of the beginning of a new era. It was a sign of the arrival of a new golden age for the human race. Of course, it was not only the human race that was paying attention. The other alien races had obtained the news through various means. Although they could not watch it in person, they still wanted to know the situation of this battle through various means. Everyone's attention. This was another round of everyone's attention. This time, the everyone referred to billions of races. Lu Feng moved once again. His actions involved the heartbeats of countless creatures. His actions were a kind of solidification of history. Berserk. Lu Feng had gone berserk. The power of the twin souls was completely activated at this moment. In the void, countless heavens condensed. Unlike before, the appearance of the green firmament sky this time was not as simple as before. This was because countless terrifying thunderbolts and storms had appeared in the dense dark clouds. This was the display of the other two great immortal techniques. Lu Feng had actually displayed 3 supreme immortal techniques at once. That sky was an unprecedentedly terrifying sky. It was the limit of more than 20 green firmament skies superimposed. The number of thunderbolts and storms that densely covered it had reached an indescribable level. Everyone had a feeling that under this sky, even if a deity stepped into it, they would be instantly annihilated and become eternal nothingness. It could be said that the terror of this sky had already become a disaster. This was a supreme immortal technique on the level of a disaster. The movement of the green firmament sky seemed slow, but its true speed was perfectly coordinated with Lu Feng's. As Lu Feng moved, the supreme heavens also moved, trembled, and destroyed the world. At this moment, Lu Feng directly used his ultimate power. This was no longer the time to hold back. He had relied on watching the battle between the two strongest experts since ancient times to finally have the ability to fight against a true god. If this dragged on, the loser would definitely be him. Therefore, Lu Feng directly entered the peak state of his life. He directly wanted to destroy everything. Terrifying, terrifying, extreme, extreme. Lu Feng seemed to be the source of all disasters. He was the center of all disasters. His arrival brought about endless annihilation. Unknowingly, the two of them had already gone into the endless void of the universe. They understood that if the battle were to take place on the capital planet, not to mention the entire capital city, even the entire capital planet would be reduced to nothingness by the two of them. They were both true gods. A collision was definitely enough to destroy everything. The source of destruction was Lu Feng. He arrived in an instant, his speed reaching the extreme. In an instant, an attack that shook heaven and earth was used. In the face of this powerful attack, Rong Yuanyu was equally excited. He also desired to create history and to have a battle at the peak. After all, he was also a martial artist. He was also a pure martial artist. Kill! Kill! Two loud roars that shook heaven and earth shattered the void of the universe. An extreme cosmic collision instantly appeared, easily annihilating time and space. Chapter 622. Lu Feng's fist was caught between Rong Yuanyu's hands, and a terrifying power was faintly activated. In an instant, Lu Feng's body was going to collapse into nothingness. If it were anyone else, they would have failed. However, the person he was facing was Lu Feng, an emperor. How could the existence of an emperor be weaker than anyone else? If I fight, I will not be defeated. Just as Rong Yuanyu was about to use his powerful combat power, the sky of destruction descended. This was a power that could easily kill any pinnacle divine spirit. Although it was not enough to directly kill a true god, its appearance still made Rong Yuanyu's expression change. Lu Feng took advantage of that moment of hesitation. At this moment, Lu Feng broke free from all the shackles and restraints and once again unleashed an invincible power. Heavenly King Strike! Heavenly King Strike! This was the supreme killing power of Wang Tong's chapter in the scripture of the human king. The terrifying power of annihilation was completely released at this moment, and it easily sent Rong Yuanyu flying far away. At the same time, the sky of destruction also came pouring down at this moment, completing the most violent annihilation. The void was chaotic, and the entire universe seemed to have been beaten into nothingness. It was horrifying. With such unparalleled violence, perhaps even a super life-bearing planet would have been completely annihilated into nothingness. Terror, this was extreme terror. The combat power of two true gods, but because of the existence of the sky of destruction, Lu Feng's destructive power far exceeded the limit of what an ordinary true god could achieve. Although Lu Feng was only comparable to an ordinary low-level true divinity existence, the unrivaled slaughter he unleashed caused the world to tremble. Even high-level true divinities felt uneasy and wanted to retreat. At this moment, bright red blood appeared and directly dispersed into the void of the universe. Countless warriors and psyche masters who had come to the void of the universe were dumbfounded when they saw this shocking scene. They looked at the continuous bombardment of the heavenly destruction dome and Lu Feng, who was still waving his fists crazily. They all had the same thought in their minds. Did he win? How could it be so simple? How could the existence of a true god be so easily annihilated? A true divinity was a true divinity, an existence that far surpassed that of a true divinity. It was because of the existence of a true divinity that condensed a single divine source. They have already condensed their deified bodies, souls, wills, and even their godheads into one and only existence. And this is what makes true gods invincible, invincible, absolutely invincible. As if to prove the validity of this statement, a dazzling brilliance appeared in the sky of destruction, where Lu Feng was bombarding the pole endlessly. In an instant, heaven and earth shook. In an instant, everything was annihilated. In an instant, it broke through the sky. The destructive sky was annihilated, instantly annihilated by the great power of the true God, becoming a thing of the past. As for Lu Feng, he was similarly sent flying far away by the most powerful attack. At this moment, blood, an endless amount of blood splattered everywhere. Lu Feng's body was directly smashed into countless places. His entire body gave off a feeling of fragmentation. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on the figure that destroyed everything. Rong Yuanyu, the one and only true god Rong Yuanyu. His body was mottled with blood. Obviously, when he was fighting against Lu Feng, he was not as terrifying as when he destroyed everything. He had also suffered an indescribable injury. Blood dripped down, causing ripples in the void. Legend has it that the blood of a deity is a divine object. Even if it is the most ordinary blood, when they transform into a deity's combat strength, their blood will carry an incomparably terrifying divine radiance. This blood is the blood of a deity, and the blood of a deity is already a fifth-grade divine object. As long as a deity entered the realm of a deity's combat strength, the blood of a deity would show a change in divinity. At this time, the blood of a deity would be a fifth-grade divine object. A fifth-grade divine object. There are millions of such things, but now they are all over the void. Moreover, this blood is the blood of the one and only true God. It is at least a sixth-grade divine object. Everyone sighed. This kind of blood itself contained the power of a deity. It could be said to be a terrifying divine object that was like a miracle. Now it was scattered like there was no end to it. Rong Yuanyu stretched out his arm and gently waved it. Suddenly, the blood that was all over the place disappeared, and the previous state was restored. Seeing this scene, countless people revealed a look of horror. Supreme Divine Body. This is actually a Supreme Divine Body. Principal Rong Yuanyu has actually condensed a Supreme Divine Body. Although his combat strength is only that of a beginner true god, his existence is definitely one of those stronger beginner true gods, or even the top beginner true gods. The Emperor is in danger this time, countless people exclaimed. They did not expect Rong Yuanyu to have condensed a supreme divine body. One should know that even for a true god, it was not that easy to condense a supreme divine body. Only those with a strong will and shocking talent could complete such a transformation. Once a supreme divine body was condensed, no matter if it was an ordinary true god or a true god, their strength would increase tremendously. No one expected that the opponent that Lu Feng randomly chose would be a terrifying existence that had condensed a supreme divine body. Such an opponent was probably even stronger than the true god that the human king suppressed in the demigod realm. Many existences sighed slightly. They knew that if it was an ordinary true god, Lu Feng might still have a chance with the power that he had displayed. However, facing a true god who had condensed a supreme divine body, it was almost impossible to win. The Emperor has chosen the wrong opponent. This was the only thought in the minds of all the Almighties, peerless Almighties, and even those who were at the peak of existence. The almost collapsed body was slowly recovering. Many existences knew that it was Lu Feng's bloodline. The power that belonged to the universe's number one bloodline was showing its effect, repairing Lu Feng's body at a terrifying speed. Many people knew about this scene. Back then, when Lu Feng was fighting against the King of Taboo, Demon King's clone in the Medicine God territory, he relied on the terrifying recovery ability of his bloodline power to withstand the Demon King's attack and finally became a peak upheaval transformation stage ancient martial art practitioner. This time, Lu Feng was able to recover so quickly because of the existence of his bloodline power. Finally, Lu Feng recovered to his previous state in an extremely short period of time. His clothes were fluttering from head to toe, but they were still dyed with a noble purple-gold color. However, it was constantly telling everyone that Lu Feng was indeed severely injured just now. Looking at Lu Feng, who had recovered to his previous state, there was a shocking fluctuation in Rong Yuanyu's eyes. Emperor, your existence is really too heaven-defying. You have unlimited power and no one in the same generation can compete with you. In addition to the power of your bloodline, your terrifying physical body, and the mysterious power that lingers in your body. Just the existence of your physical body is almost comparable to those who have condensed the supreme divine body. Your killing power is unparalleled, and your recovery ability is even more terrifying to an extreme extent. Indeed, you are a god-level existence. Even the peak gods are probably no match for you. The gap between them and you is too big. Everyone was silent. These people all knew that Rong Yuanyu's words were not wrong. Lu Feng had recovered to his invincible state. In addition to his killing power, there was no one in the world who could compete with him. If he added his terrifying transformation speed, it was only a matter of time before he reached the peak in the future. Moreover, it would not even be a long time. Lu Feng chuckled, but at this moment, there was a kind of bloodthirsty ferocity in his smile. At this moment, Lu Feng was extremely terrifying. Even his relatives could not believe that the usually indifferent young man would show such a terrifying scene at this moment. After the smile, Lu Feng moved. He did not say another word. Now, his blood had boiled to the limit. His soul that thirsted for battle was already burning and crazy. He wanted to fight to the peak, to fight until heaven and earth shattered and the sun and moon disappeared. Kill! Lu Feng once again unleashed a world-shaking tremor. By this time, his figure had almost disappeared. His two souls were activated, and all sorts of invincible powers were added to his power. Countless immortal spells were used, and his power was increased, and increased, and increased. Lawless. At this moment, Lu Feng was demonstrating what it meant to be lawless in the perfect stage of the martial artist realm. No one had ever been like him, able to kill to such a state, able to fight against a true god like this. The blood of countless young people was also boiling. They had already burned to the limit. At this moment, Lu Feng, in their eyes and in their hearts, seemed to have begun to change. He had begun a completely new transformation, a transformation of divinity. Lu Feng was no longer a simple Lu Feng. He seemed to have become a symbol that made them chase after him, a symbol that made them go crazy. Everyone could vaguely feel that what Lu Feng had condensed was no longer just their desire for victory in battle, but more of a kind of persistence, a kind of belief. Lu Feng's killing caused endless fear. I am the Emperor. In the endless time and space, the greatest Emperor's figure was shaking. It roared to the sky, triggering countless mysterious powers. In an instant, all of them were added to Lu Feng's body. Lu Feng's fist finally arrived, finally killing Rong Yuanyu's supreme divine body. At this moment, Rong Yuanyu's eyes were also crazy. The battle with Lu Feng had ignited the glory of a martial artist in his heart. It had ignited the blood of battle that had passed away in him. Therefore, he also wanted a crazy battle. He wanted to forget everything and go crazy to his heart's content. Two fists landed on Lu Feng's and Rong Yuanyu's bodies. In an instant, shocking fluctuations appeared again, causing the void to show a scene of fragmentation. The void of the Milky Way of the past seemed to be fragile glass at this moment. It suffered damage that exceeded its limits and started to shatter. This is the power of a true god. It's an existence that can easily cause aftershocks, but it can actually have the fighting strength of a true god after going berserk to the extreme. The Emperor, he completely has the fighting strength of a true god. Now, he is no different from the human king of the past. He is equivalent to the human king appearing. Now, Lu Feng's performance had already proven his greatness. Although everything now couldn't surpass the human king, everything he showed was already at the level of the human king in the past. Lu Feng was a living human king. The voice was not concealed at all. Countless existences heard this sentence. At this moment, they were endlessly shaken. The shock in the depths of their hearts became even more intense. Countless young existences looked at Lu Feng with an indescribable shock in their eyes. It was an expression that even surpassed their own. At this moment, even the desolate emperor, who saw Lu Feng as a rival, was looking at Lu Feng with the same burning gaze. His heart was also boiling. Lu Feng represented more than just a name. Watching his battle, their hearts were shaken along with Lu Feng's turbulence. Their wills were also shaken along with Lu Feng's turbulence. As long as there was a hot-blooded existence, as long as they saw the emperor descend, as long as they saw the emperor's tyranny, their wills would attach themselves to the emperor and become the emperor's most devout subjects. Lu Feng's strength was already inconceivable. He represented the limit of the younger generation. As for the younger generation, they were often praised as the younger generation with great potential. However, in the end, they didn't have the peak strength and were always denied by others. Lu Feng's appearance made them understand a truth. That was that the younger generation could also dominate and bow down to others. They could also overlook the heavens. They could also enjoy endless glory and be invincible in their generation. Chapter 623. Lu Feng's power was still surging. The endless recovery power of his bloodline surged, allowing Lu Feng's injuries to heal completely in a short time. At this moment, he was like Rong Yuanyu, who had a supreme divine body. They were both using their life force. Fight, 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 fight until heaven and earth were destroyed. Kill, 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 kill until time ran out. The two of them had gone completely crazy. They had even forgotten their battle technique. They were using the simplest, most extreme, and most violent methods. Endless blood splattered everywhere. Bright red and purple gold blood spread everywhere. It was strangely beautiful and desolate. However, the two of them did not care at all. Broken arm? It's fine, it's fine. I still have my will, I still have my bloodline. My body pierced? It's fine, it's fine. I still have my soul, I still have my recovery power. At this moment, the blood of countless existences boiled. Even the peerless almighties who witnessed this scene felt a slight ripple in their hearts. The existence of the Emperor has almost become a religion. This is a blessing for the human race, but also a misfortune for the human race. If he is strong enough to reach the peak, then the current generation of the human race will have unprecedented strength. Any existence that follows the Emperor will be able to shake the galaxy and suppress a part of the sky. However, if the Emperor falls, then the human race will truly wither. The entire generation will be completely destroyed. Is this good or bad? Their voices echoed among the ancestors of the various families. Countless people were silent. They did not know whether this was a good thing or not. However, they had no choice but to face it. The Emperor is the taboo king. Since ancient times, there have only been 4 taboo kings. They had all experienced countless eras and traveled through countless eras. Even so, they will still fail when facing the Emperor, although they have all kinds of reasons and excuses. However, their failure is still a failure. No one can deny this. How could such a berserk emperor fall? I firmly believe that in the future, he will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the human kings, or even surpass them. Our current human race is even more powerful than the human race during the era of the human monarch. Give me a human monarch, and our human race will definitely reign supreme in the universe. We will reign supreme over the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This era will be the era of the emperors, the era of the human race. I will be the emperor. Heavenly King move. Earth King move. These were all the most powerful forces. The appearance of any one of them was enough to wipe out countless existences, leaving the entire world in fear. Even the Emperor of Massacre would need a long time to accumulate enough power to unleash such a terrifying killing move. It was impossible for them to continuously unleash it within a short period of time. But those restrictions were a joke to Lu Feng. His arms never stopped moving, and his hot blood never froze. Countless peerless attacks were unleashed continuously. At this moment, Lu Feng finally displayed an even more terrifying scene to the billions of beings in the universe. His power was limitless, limitless. In the void, the destructive firmament took shape over and over again. The destructive firmament, which was mixed with Xian lightning and Xian wind, gave many spiritual masters a feeling of supremacy. They understood that the supreme immortal technique formed by the fusion was almost restored to its peak in the past. This kind of firmament power seemed to already have the embryonic form of an extralegal Dharma, supreme Dharma. The destructive firmament descended, causing endless annihilation. It damaged the void until it was mottled and incomplete. It made the universe and the galaxy start to tremble as if it was about to disintegrate. However, it was only the destructive firmament that was not truly invincible. Its opponent was an invincible existence that had achieved great success in the previous generation. He was a true god. The existence of a true god was the only one of its kind. His power was to break the sky with one hand. Break the sky. Break the sky. Unceasingly destroying the heavens. The destructive firmament was destroyed and formed over and over again. Lu Feng swung his fists again and again, causing tremors and serious injuries time and time again. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. In such an extreme collision, even a demon would not be able to hold on for more than a few moments. However, the two of them actually fought with blood for a few hours. Up until now, the area that had been destroyed by them had already exceeded the range of 10,000 capital planet. Everyone was horrified. They were overwhelmed with shock. These people finally understood the significance of the combat power of a true god. This meant that as long as they were willing, they could directly shatter a super life-sustaining planet into nothingness. One had to know that this was directly shattering the planet into nothingness, not obliterating everything on it. Looking at the two people in the void, who were getting more and more injured, many ancient existences sighed slightly. They had already seen the final outcome. The Emperor is world-shocking. It's really world-shocking. His combat power, his recovery ability, and his accumulation of power are completely incomparable to any of his peers. Although I don't know how immortal kings and demon kings are like, looking at the countless existences of this era, even the young heavenly venerate Hades, the great sky demon emperor, and the first divine king of the past are far from comparable to him. Perhaps only the human king, who has never crossed a bottom line, can truly compare to Lu Feng. Terrifying. Truly peerless and terrifying. However, it's still a pity. Even though he had such shocking combat power, invincible abilities, and everything that shook the world, his physical body was ultimately only on the verge of becoming a supreme divine body, not a divine body. Looking at the Emperor's combat body throughout the countless eras, I'm afraid that even in the primordial immortal demon era, no one can compare to him. However, his combat body has never reached the great success realm, so his current combat body is still unable to compete with a supreme divine body. After more than 2 hours of fighting, his bloodline's recovery power has reached its limit. He is finally going to collapse. As if to prove the ancient Almighty's words, the next moment, Lu Feng was finally sent flying. His body was countless times more dismal than when he had suffered the most terrifying injuries. His current state could no longer be described as being in tatters. Miserable, incomparably miserable. The recovery power had almost disappeared, making it difficult for Lu Feng to recover. At this moment, the world was silent. Countless people were speechless. Although they had already imagined this scene, when they truly faced it, no one was willing to believe it. They did not believe that the invincible emperor would fall. The first time he struggled, he did not get up. Lu Feng's eyes had already dimmed, the divine light fading faintly. The second time he struggled, he still failed. At this moment, his arm was completely broken. It was extremely miserable. The third time he struggled, he still failed. His legs were completely twisted. It was tragic. Every time he struggled, it would inevitably be a kind of heart-wrenching injury. Every time he moved, it would inevitably bring about an even heavier injury. For the last time, Lu Feng's eyes had completely lost their luster. At this moment, the people who used various methods to watch this shocking battle were all dumbfounded. Even those who were as strong as the almighty existences were completely dumbfounded. They looked at everything in front of them in disbelief, as if they could not believe it. The Emperor has fallen? The Emperor? Is he dead? How is that possible? Impossible, absolutely impossible. No one will believe that the Emperor has fallen like this. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Some of the younger generation exclaimed. They could not believe everything in front of them. Once upon a time, they had regarded heavenly god Jialan as their idol. However, heavenly god Jialan had died, bringing with him endless regret. He had fallen on the verge of becoming the divine king. Once upon a time, they had regarded Lu Tao as their idol. However, Godslayer Lu Tao had failed. The moment he became a divine spirit, his path to becoming the divine king was destroyed by the nether race's primogenitor. Now they regarded Lu Feng as their faith. However, Lu Feng had failed? He had died. Countless people sucked in a breath of cold air. In the universe back then, to the human race, anyone could fall. Even the supreme of the other Tao was the same. However, only the Emperor could not. The Emperor was the foundation of the human race's future. He could not die. Fear, endless fear. In the next moment, a figure appeared in the endless void. It was a terrifying existence surrounded by endless laws. It was an incomparably illusory existence. Everyone knew that this was just a projection. But even though it was just a projection, it gave people a feeling of supremacy and invincibility. They understood that this was a supreme of the other Tao. Lu Feng's battle had also attracted the arrival of a supreme of the other Tao. That is the heavenly venerate king of the Lu family, the heavenly venerate king of the Lu family. The most famous supreme of the other Tao of the Lu family, a great existence known by the entire human race, had actually descended. Everyone was speechless. They could not describe the shock in their hearts at this moment. They looked at the heavenly venerate king, not understanding what this invincible existence wanted to do. Although the heavenly venerate king's projection could not be compared to his clone, his strength was still not something that ordinary peak almighties could compare to. The heavenly venerate king walked quietly and came to Lu Feng's side. After he glanced at it, a look that everyone could clearly see appeared in his eyes. At this moment, countless people's hearts were already tangled. They seemed to understand that their guesses just now were about to come true. After a short while, another extremely terrifying crack opened, and another hazy and illusory existence descended upon this place. This person was recognized by many of the ancient family ancestors who had participated in the supreme battle. They knew that this person was the Radiant King, the supreme of the other Tao of the Human Federation government. The Radiant King looked at the heavenly venerate king with a strange expression. They had also descended beside Lu Feng. After taking a look, they sighed softly. He failed. The light in the heavenly venerate king's eyes dimmed as he nodded gently. In the end, the Emperor still failed to complete the sacred site and surpass the primogenitor human monarch. Although he is now comparable to the primogenitor human monarch, but he still failed. He no longer has the ability to fight. Chapter 6:24. Hearing this voice, many of the primogenitors had complicated looks in their eyes. One was rejoicing, and the other was disappointment. Rejoicing that Lu Feng was not dead. Disappointment that Lu Feng was not able to complete the shocking sacred relic. In the end, he was still unable to surpass the number one sovereign human king and create a shocking sacred relic. Let's go. I think he will recover on his own. He has failed. Now, he wants to recover quietly on his own. The current Lu Feng did not need any help. Although he was severely injured, he only needed some time to wait for his bloodline power to recover. Then, he would be able to be reborn and return to his peak state in a short period of time. This was the terror of the strongest bloodline in the history of the Lu family. Turning around, the illusory figures of the two great heretical path supreme beings did not look at anyone. Just like that, they completely disappeared from everyone's sight. Looking at Lu Feng lying in the void, who seemed to have lost all ability, many almighty experts had already given up. They wanted to turn around and leave with hope and a heart of pilgrimage. However, in the end, they still failed. Although everyone understood and guessed that this failure was inevitable, they could not help but feel sad. Many existences were already preparing to leave, or had already torn open the void and started to leave. However, these people were not all of them. There were still some existences who believed that Lu Feng could create the greatest sacred relic. He is invincible. In the midst of the haze, a voice was heard clearly in the void. Everyone looked in that direction with strange expressions on their faces. This was because the person who had arrived was the desolate emperor, who was going to be Lu Feng's opponent. No one had expected that he had already arrived in the void of the universe. He actually came here. The emperor is invincible. Wan Yueming arrived with a crazed expression and endless faith. In his eyes there was a kind of endless turbulence, a kind of boundless will. The emperor is invincible. Qi Liang, Beigong Tianxi, and Nanming Shang had arrived. Their blood was boiling, and they did not believe in anything. Their bodies were trembling violently. They might be young, they might be weak, but they were the younger generation full of miracles. Invincible emperor. One, then another, then 10, 100, 1,000. Countless martial artists and young people kept coming. They used all kinds of methods to come to the void of the universe. They didn't believe it, they didn't accept it, they didn't want to. Emperor! You! Invincible! One sound after another, countless sounds converged and merged. If one person from the younger generation believed in Lu Feng, 10 people believed in him, 100 people believed in him. When all the peak existences denied Lu Feng, when no one was willing to believe that Lu Feng could create miracles, they had to appear. They believed, they firmly believed. For this reason, they disregarded the danger and came here. They were the younger generation. Amidst the haze, the younger generation who were leaning on various instruments and quietly watching everything in the void were filled with anticipation, trembling, and going crazy. As long as they were from the younger generation, they were shouting. Regardless of whether they had been ridiculed by Lu Feng, defeated by Lu Feng, or ignored by Lu Feng in the past, they still believed in him now. They had always believed in Lu Feng's existence. They had always believed that Lu Feng could create a sacred relic, create a new epoch, and create a new era that belonged to the emperor. Among the younger generation, Lu Feng's existence had already surpassed the limit of what a monster could represent. His existence was a kind of belief, a supreme totem of the younger generation. Therefore, when all the existences in the universe denied Lu Feng's existence and thought that he had failed, only they firmly believed that the sacred relic would still appear and that the glory of the emperor would never wither. Endless time and space were in turmoil as millions of beliefs turned into eternal power. The expressions of many powerful existences changed drastically when they saw this scene. Even in the face of the collapse of heaven and earth, even in the face of the vicissitudes of time, they were always calm and natural. However, at this moment, when they saw the madness of the younger generation, they couldn't help but be stunned. They couldn't help but feel intense turbulence. There had never been anyone like Lu Feng, who had become a kind of belief at a young age. He had become the supreme existence of the younger generation, like a totem. Lu Feng, these two words, represented not just the emperor, not just the taboo king, and not just the most powerful existence of the younger generation. He represented a kind of will, a kind of supreme spirit of the younger generation, a kind of hot-blooded spirit of the younger generation. Even if he failed, Lu Feng was still their belief. It was still their will to bravely move forward and sprinkle their hot-blooded spirit. Emperor, you defeated the crown prince of the heavenly Tao, defied the heavens and punished the world. You defeated the powerful crown prince of the heavenly Tao and started the battle of the kings. Have you ever failed? Emperor, you supreme law, you incarnated into Fudu, you shook the universe and the galaxy, you killed hundreds of peak-level geniuses of the other races. Have you ever failed? Emperor, you were glorious and prosperous, you fought against the clones of the 4 peak-level geniuses of the ancient era. You faced them head-on and everything was shattered. Have you ever failed? Emperor, you were endlessly angry, only for the sake of a woman. You faced Emperor Yu, you dared to kill everything, you were fearless, you pressed forward with indomitable will. Have you ever failed? Emperor, you crossed the river of time and space and completed a shocking battle. In this future era, you suppressed the supreme immortal master who was hailed as the most powerful primitive immortal devil era. Have you ever failed? Emperor, you are a miracle, you are a miracle. Our hot-blooded blood is stirred because of you, our souls are cleansed because of you, we fight in the void and keep advancing because of you. How can you fail? Stand up, Emperor. Stand up, Emperor. Stand up, Emperor! Countless roars shook the entire capital city, the entire capital planet, the entire galaxy, the entire human race, the entire galaxy, and the entire era. This was the hot-blooded and indomitable cry of the younger generation. They were betting their fates on the battle of the future. They had already linked their fates with Lu Feng's. Lu Feng represented them. If Lu Feng failed, they would fail. From then on, they would sink into oblivion and never advance. Lu Feng's victory meant that they would be together with the Emperor, and they would continue to step onto that unreachable peak. Countless ancient existences wanted to say something. They couldn't watch the younger generation of the human race lose all hope of advancing because of this battle. They couldn't watch the future of the human race be destroyed like this. Therefore, the progenitors of the various aristocratic families spoke up and strongly dissuaded everything. However, what appeared this time was simply unbelievable. The many young masters who had always obeyed him seemed to have gone completely crazy this time. They actually ignored his advice and even ignored his orders. In their eyes, only the Emperor was left in their hearts. Emperor Lu Feng, who had fallen and failed, who they didn't know if he could stand up again. The desolate Emperor raised his head and looked at the divine king of the desolate era, who was at the quasi-life and death realm. He chuckled, laughed crazily, and laughed wildly. Progenitor, you are my progenitor. We respect you, and worship you. But you are not us. The younger generation of the human race has sunk into oblivion for too long. In the past, the monstrous heavenly god Jialan was born in an epoch. He led the younger generation of the human race to the peak, but his end was so miserable. Then, the god-slaying Lu Tao appeared again. He shook the starry sky, but his end was so bleak. We, the younger generation of the human race, have had enough of this oppression. Emperor Lu Feng is our hope. We are willing to witness history with him. We, the younger generation, don't want to see that kind of sad end. We don't want to see that kind of bleak end. For this, even if we pour everything we have, what can we do? If we don't reach the peak, what is the use of us monstrous geniuses? Please allow us to indulge, please allow us to go crazy. Because we are the younger generation. If we don't go crazy, don't worship, and don't believe, are we still the younger generation? The desolate Emperor's words were everyone's words. His belief was everyone's belief. At this moment, in the eyes of the younger generation, there was only Emperor Lu Feng left. There was only this belief left. They wanted to witness the appearance of a miracle. For this, even if they had to pay everything, they would have no regret. No regrets. Countless progenitor existences were silent. They had already sensed the resolute will of the younger generation. They understood that no matter what they said, it would be of no use. Perhaps they could use violence to bring their children back to their families. However, that would be equivalent to destroying their children's lives. This was something that no progenitor wanted to see. Moreover, the desolate emperor's last words had stirred up the memories that had been sealed in the depths of their hearts for a long time. If we don't go crazy, don't worship, and don't believe, are we still the younger generation? Yes, the younger generation should be hot-blooded and crazy. This time, they were let go. At this moment, countless progenitors were looking at Lu Feng. In their eyes, Lu Feng was no longer just an emperor. At this moment, he represented the hope of the younger generation. He was the belief of the younger generation. He was the totem that the younger generation looked up to endlessly in the depths of their hearts. Therefore, at this moment, the almighty progenitor existences had changed. They were also looking forward to Lu Feng standing up. Stand up! In the haze, there was an endless clamor between heaven and earth. However, amidst everyone's shouts, there seemed to be an endless silence. Finally, they heard it. Dong 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 dong! A gentle throbbing sound appeared at this moment. In this endless clamor, it was so clear. His fingers moved gently, his arms swayed gently, his body trembled slightly, his eyes opened fiercely. In the end, he had woken up. He had completely recovered. The great demon will not die. These 4 words that shook the galaxy slowly appeared. It really shook the galaxy. Everyone saw it. Their breathing stopped, and their expressions turned crazy. They had witnessed it. Lu Feng stood up. His entire body felt like it was about to collapse. His body felt like it was about to be destroyed. However, he stood up once again. With the hope of the younger generation, with their belief, Lu Feng stood up again. His great figure turned into an eternal light that pierced through the taboo of time and space. It shattered the eternal confusion. Any doubt, any hope, at this moment, received their final reward. He, Emperor Lu Feng, had finally returned. Chapter 6:25. Regardless of victory or defeat, regardless of success, in the end, he still became the hope and totem of the younger generation and once again battled in the era of the galaxy. The great demon never dies. Heaven and earth were destroyed, the universe sank, space-time collapsed, and reincarnation collapsed. But I, the great demon, have never perished. Lu Feng's great demon never dies was the strongest power after achieving the 3rd realm of the great demon true body, the purple-gold great demon body. It was the most terrifying supreme power that far surpassed the previous great demon power. It had already surpassed the existence of a pinnacle supreme power and was capable of annihilating everything. All of his injuries worsened at this moment, but Lu Feng's soul seemed to have undergone a terrifying transformation. His physical body also seemed to have undergone a shocking transformation. He didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation while bearing these terrifying injuries. Lu Feng had transformed into a supreme devil emperor, and with boundless power, he unleashed a deadly attack. Terrifying spatial fluctuations caused countless people to unconsciously close their eyes. Under this endless brilliance, they couldn't even open their eyes. In a distant place, Rong Yuanyu's eyes bloomed with a shocking divine light. His arms trembled completely. His heart was also trembling violently. Emperor, you've returned. What do I have to fear? Fight again, fight again, fight again. I'm right here, waiting for you to attack again. I'll bestow upon you another defeat. The power of a true god erupted completely. Rong Yuanyu wasn't an ordinary existence who had just stepped into the true god realm. He had even condensed a supreme divine body at the true god realm. Although he didn't have the terrifying ability to challenge those of a higher level, he was now worthy of being called a genius among the true gods. Therefore, he was much, much more powerful than ordinary true gods. Lu Feng's power now was really qualified to obliterate a true god. His current terror was because Lu Feng, who had returned, had truly surpassed the primogenitor human monarch. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, Lu Feng had truly undergone a complete transformation when he used his immortal great demon body to guide the endless power back. He had succeeded. However, the sacred site wasn't over yet. Everything wasn't over yet. As an emperor, he didn't want such an unsuccessful sacred site. What he wanted was perfection. In the era of the emperor was the greatest existence. As the greatest existence, how could he tolerate any imperfections, any failures? Therefore, great demon, kill. Finally, after crossing the long river of time and space, the two invincible slaughters finally collided. In the void, a violent fluctuation that surpassed any other time appeared and actually annihilated the endless galaxy. In an instant, countless almighty primogenitor experts took action, protecting the younger generation that had arrived. They knew that even the desolate emperor, who was far away, would not be able to survive in the aftermath of the collision of the two extreme daos. The gap between them and Lu Feng was simply too big. After an endless amount of time, the crowd finally waited for the end of the annihilation. As they looked into the distance, they could vaguely see that in the middle of the annihilation, endless waves of terrifying collisions were still spreading out, and new life was still being born. Everyone knew that Great Demon Emperor was using his Great Demon Monarch to fight against true God Rong Yuanyu. The eyes of many ancient primogenitors and Great Demon Monarchs trembled. They couldn't believe that Great Demon Monarch, who had clearly failed and was about to die, was fighting so crazily now. Finally, a peerless primogenitor's eyes flickered with boundless light. This is monster. This is a true monster. How can he be so terrifying? Walking on the edge of death, lingering in the abyss of oblivion. His strength is completely forged from the struggle between life and death and destruction. A world-shocking emperor. A world-shocking emperor. Following that peerless primogenitor's discovery, more and more existences also saw it clearly. They were also shocked and trembling. That's the fluctuation of his life. That's the supreme power that only life and death quasi-kings can comprehend. The power of life. He actually comprehended the power of life at the moment of death, with death as the foundation. Great Demon Monarch is really going to be invincible. A saint relic is really going to be born. 6 supreme powers. At this moment, Lu Feng had 2 souls and opened the limit of existence. What he had was the 6 supreme powers that only those who had entered the final phase of King Battle could comprehend. Coupled with his supreme divine ability, twin souls, Lu Feng was already on par with those terrifying existences in the later stages of King's War, except for his lack of strength. His strength was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. Even Rong Yuanyu, who was as strong as a true god, was forced to retreat step by step in front of the newly transformed Lu Feng. Many of the younger generation began to go crazy. Their persistence, their belief, and their bet were not in vain. Lu Feng stood up. He really stood up. His majesty as an emperor was completely restored at this moment. His strength was thoroughly ferocious at this moment. Lu Feng's current performance had already surpassed that of a mortal king. This was a terrifying saint relic that not even a perfect mortal king could do in the past. However, they all understood that Lu Feng was not satisfied. He was far from satisfied. This kind of transcendence was not perfect. He was an emperor, the most powerful existence. How could he allow his saint relic to have the slightest flaw? Therefore, he still wanted to go crazy and fight. Dragging his decayed and broken body, Lu Feng's battle became even crazier. The 6 supreme powers were used to the limit. The supreme powers of 2 souls were fully displayed, causing his power to soar like never before. This time, it was not just one heaven of destruction that appeared, but 3. The terrifying suppression of the 3 heaven of destruction was something that even a true god would find difficult to bear. In addition to Lu Feng's world-destroying slaughter, Rong Yuanyu finally collapsed. At the last moment, the scene of Lu Feng being completely slaughtered appeared again. Only this time, it was Rong Yuanyu who was at the true god level. Everyone was trembling. They seemed to be witnessing the arrival of a new era of prosperity. They seemed to be witnessing the arrival of a terrifying emperor era. Countless people were trembling. They knew that Lu Feng, who had completed his transformation, who had returned from the abyss of death, was truly unstoppable. He had truly possessed invincible talent and had become the strongest person in the same realm in the endless epochs. With such combat strength, even a mortal king is no match for him. Looking at the endless epochs, he is undoubtedly the strongest person. Many primogenitors' evaluation of Lu Feng was like this. They had already determined that even if Lu Feng could not win, he would still become the strongest person in the current era, or even in all the epochs. In a distant place, Lu Feng's strength was still continuing. Although it was violent and terrifying, his opponent, Rong Yuanyu, who was at the true god level, had already condensed a supreme divine body. Unless Lu Feng could really destroy him completely, it would be difficult for him to win. The recovery ability of a supreme divine body can be said to be shocking. Although the Emperor has suppressed Rong Yuanyu in terms of strength, he is still unable to defeat him completely. Moreover, I can feel that such an Emperor cannot possibly exhaust a true god with a supreme divine body. If he takes too long, he will definitely lose. What a pity, what a pity, what a pity, what a pity. Originally, Lu Feng could create a shocking sacred relic and draw the most perfect symbol for his sacred relic. Unfortunately, the opponent he had chosen was too terrifying. Although he was not a terrifying genius who could defy the heavens and punish the world, he had a terrifying opportunity that no one else could have. He had condensed a supreme divine body. This was enough to make Lu Feng lose. After all, Lu Feng was not a true god. Everyone was watching quietly. Unlike the pessimistic attitude of the primogenitors, the younger generation held an attitude of infinite admiration. They believed in Lu Feng. When Lu Feng had been determined to fail, they believed that Lu Feng would rise again. It was still not enough. How could this be enough? Therefore, he still needed it. Finally, the bloodline power that had just appeared was once again activated by Lu Feng, making him even more violent. 5 types. That was a total of 5 supreme powers. This kind of power was enough to shock the heavens and earth. It was enough to make time pale in comparison. Everyone looked at Lu Feng, their hearts trembling. They could no longer contain the turbulent emotions in their hearts. They had never seen such a terrifying and crazy blessing. This was simply a heaven-defying birth. In everyone's eyes, this was already an indescribable horror. However, in Lu Feng's eyes, it was still not enough. It was still far from enough. Another heaven-shaking roar rang out. Lu Feng's madness was still going on, and he was still going crazy. It's still not enough. This is still not enough. I want to reach the peak, the highest peak. I want to completely defeat everything. I want the final victory. How could this be enough? This is completely not enough. Therefore, I need to be even crazier. I still need the final madness. Finally, it appeared. Chapter 6:26. Endless turbulence, the long river of time and space appeared. In this long river, billions of godly spirits were the body, countless immortals and demons were the bones, the truth of time and space was the eye, and fate was eternally cast the soul. In the end, he still walked out with the greatest poise. It was the engraving of fate and reincarnation, the baptism of hope and karma. His existence was the gentle tempering of origin and end. His unparalleled existence was the limit of suppression and glory. The great emperor, the incarnation of the great emperor, the strongest in the universe, the incarnation of the great emperor, appeared once again. After walking out of the long river of time and space, the great emperor looked at the sky ferociously. At this moment, he completely collapsed. The moment he was at his strongest, the moment he was born, he completely collapsed. They turned into countless streams of power and began to surge wildly. All of them were absorbed into Lu Feng's body. As of this moment, Lu Feng caused everyone to stare blankly, to the point where they couldn't even begin to describe it. Supreme, Emperor, mysterious. Countless words couldn't describe 1/10,000th of Lu Feng's state at this moment. But Lu Feng was truly an existence like that. He suppressed everything and anything. 6 types of supreme power. It's actually 6 types of supreme power. 3 of them have far surpassed the peak of supreme power. The supreme power condensed by the great emperor this time is almost equivalent to 8 or even 9 types of ordinary supreme power. This is too terrifying, too terrifying. Many primogenitors and almighties were roaring. Now that Lu Feng had appeared, and now that Lu Feng had strengthened them, they couldn't help but feel excited. The desolate emperor was shocked. At this moment, he felt the summons of the supreme power in the deepest part of his body. He felt a kind of summon that originated from one body. He turned around and looked at Qi Liang and Wan Yueming, who were beside him, and saw that the two of them had the same crazy expression. They understood that Lu Feng had really gone completely crazy. He had actually used so much supreme power. The great emperor will always be the great emperor. He will always be an existence that we have to look up to. The 3 of them who possess supreme power naturally understood how terrifying this supreme power was. Even if it was a kind of supreme power, it was impossible for them to use it completely. Even if their bodies could bear it, they couldn't control it at all because the existence of this supreme power was too terrifying. But Lu Feng actually utilized 6 kinds of supreme powers. In fact, these 6 types of supreme powers were the pinnacle of supreme powers, and the moment they condensed, it was equivalent to 9 supreme powers. They had never heard of such a scene before. They had never even heard of such a thing in legends. Lu Feng's body was shaking. This kind of power was too terrifying. It was hard for him to control it, but Lu Feng still didn't lose any of it. He knew that if he wanted to use it, he couldn't disperse the slightest bit. He knew that even now, it wasn't enough. His eyes were already overflowing with a purple-gold color. The purple-gold color was the color of Lu Feng's blood. At this moment, his eyes were actually overflowing with blood. Countless purple-gold rays of light were surging all over his body. His body seemed like it was about to collapse. What is the great emperor doing? He is actually bearing so much supreme power at such a fragile moment. Is he trying to commit suicide? Many people were puzzled, but they couldn't do anything. The current Lu Feng made it impossible for them to get close. It wasn't because of his strength, but because of his mind. Right now, Lu Feng's body seemed to be surrounded by a supreme aura. The existence of this aura made even the supreme existences feel a faint sense of majesty that originated from their souls. They also knew that, given Lu Feng's majesty as the great emperor, he wouldn't allow anyone to obstruct him. If he wanted to go crazy, the only thing anyone could do was obey and submit. In a trance, the auras of the 6 supreme powers actually gradually disappeared and were gradually annihilated. However, this scene didn't make anyone feel puzzled. This was because they knew that they could sense that the 6 supreme powers hadn't disappeared. Instead, they had condensed into a shocking killing force. This killing force was unfamiliar to them. It was something they had never felt before. It was as if this killing force originated from an endless, ancient, and desolate era. This aura, I vaguely feel it before. I'm sure I've felt it before. It's so desolate and ancient, so noble and majestic, so unparalleled. I'm sure I've felt it before. An almighty progenitor from a first-rate family was horrified. He could feel the aura of Lu Feng's supreme killing force and was already trembling. Suddenly, he thought of something. He seemed to have finally recalled the origin of this aura. I've got it. It's him. That's right, it's him. Apart from him, there's nothing else that can have such an aura. I once sensed such an aura in an ancient, empty graveyard on the battlefield of the Outland Realm. Although it was only for a moment, I won't forget it. Even if I die, I absolutely won't forget it. This is the aura of an immortal. The Emperor actually has the aura of an immortal. How is this possible? How is this possible? This was simply impossible. That was the aura of an immortal. That was the aura of an immortal that had completely disappeared since the end of the immortal devil era. In the later generations, although there were powerful existences that were comparable to or even stronger than the immortals, no immortals were born. However, at this moment, the aura of the immortals appeared on Lu Feng's body. How could they not be shocked and trembled? He ignored the countless shocked gazes, ignored the death of his body, and ignored the spread of his injuries. At this moment, Lu Feng had strangely calmed down. Although his eyes were still terrifying, there was no longer a crazed look in them. No, this isn't because the Emperor has fallen. He's gone even crazier. That's the calmness that only comes from the eyes of extreme madness. What is he trying to do? Why is he doing this? No one knew. No one could understand. Because they would never be able to understand. Looking at Rong Yuanyu, who had almost recovered to his previous state at an extremely fast speed, Lu Feng smiled. Just a little more. It should be enough. Both souls were activated. Completely activated. In the void, a hazy and huge illusory figure appeared. It actually covered the heavens and the earth. It was as if an invincible giant beast from ancient times was entrenched in the depths of the starry sky, wanting to devour everything. Sky Destroyer? The Sky Destroyer that had fused with countless beings? Countless people were puzzled. However, after a moment they denied it. Because this completely illusory behemoth was simply incomparable to those that had appeared before. From it, everyone could really feel the aura of death. What a terrifying aura! Why am I facing an illusion of a world? It seems that what appeared here is a vast great world. Hearing this Almighty's voice, many people were startled awake. That's right. That feeling of death, wasn't it the terrifying feeling of oppression they felt when facing a great world? A great world. Could this be the embryonic form of a great world? Countless people found it hard to believe. After all, a world was not a planet. The existence of a world required everything to be complete. Time and space reincarnation, the origin and end of life, and complete nomological laws. The entire universe was a great world, a complete great world. The inner worlds of those invincible experts could only be considered small world. It should be known that those who could successfully condense a great world were definitely true almighty existences. However, Lu Feng had actually condensed a great world? This was something that no one could believe. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Even if the Emperor has surpassed the primogenitor human monarch and become the #1 genius since ancient times, it is absolutely impossible for him to condense a great world at such a realm. Wrong. It must be our wrong feeling. Everyone unanimously agreed. Because it was only hazy and did not appear completely, They firmly believed that it was not a great world. Lu Feng could still hear everyone's voices clearly. However, he still did not say anything. At the moment, his eyes were only focused on the distant Rong Yuanyu, who was rapidly tearing through space and approaching him. Rong Yuanyu was not an idiot. Lu Feng was clearly preparing to condense an invincible attack to completely obliterate him. How could he allow Lu Feng to accomplish this? Therefore, he had to make a move to stop everything. He had to make Lu Feng fail completely. Rong Yuanyu used up the last of his power and exerted all his strength to stop Luo Yunyang. Lu Feng also understood this clearly. However, as he watched the figure that seemed like it would arrive in the next moment, he still did not feel anything out of the ordinary. He was still as calm and composed as ever. Finally, Lu Feng's smile bloomed once again. His smile was so tranquil and peaceful, as if the dawn of life had bloomed. There was an indescribable sense of harmony. Seems like it is still not enough. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Forget it. I originally wanted to leave some leeway. In that case, there is no need to hold anything back. Let's give it our all. His voice was very calm and unperturbed. However, when these words reached the ears of many existences, they seemed to set off shocking waves that made them tremble with fear. Emperor, does he still have a trump card? What else has he not used? Right now, he has already reached his true limit. What else does he want to do? Could it be that he wants to commit suicide? However, no one could stop Lu Feng. At the moment, Lu Feng was like an immortal that existed quietly. It was as if he had descended from the top of the 9 heavens and descended from the primitive, immortal demon era. His will was the will of an emperor, the spirit of an immortal. As he watched Rong Yuanyu, who was about to arrive, Lu Feng finally uttered those words that made everyone's expressions change. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.